Okay, it's 5:33, so I am going to call to order our meeting tonight of our consolidated agenda. And I'll have our city clerk give us a roll call.
The record will reflect that all members are present.
The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by, I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance tonight, so please rise and put your hand over your heart and follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight our invocation will be by Linda Gallagher, and she's chaplain of the Rancho Buena Vista chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Welcome.
Thank you. O God, our help in ages past, our hope in years to come, we pray for our country, for the men and women who face the responsibility of leadership, for those who must make grave decisions, for all to whom we look for guidance. Quicken their understanding, deepen their loyalty to what is good and true, strengthen their wills to steadiness of purpose. Deliver them and us, we pray, from narrow ambitions and petty aims, from hypocrisy and pride and useless controversies. Grant that we may live a patriotism of willing service, that we may love our country across all barriers of human frailty, that we may learn compelling devotion and generous dedication of ourselves to the common good. We ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. In accordance with the Brown Act, I'd like to announce that as a result of convening simultaneous meetings, the members of the Buena Sanitation District will receive compensation of $147.75 for the district meeting pursuant to the Buena Sanitation District Ordinance 2006-1. The next thing is the approval of our agenda by our City Manager, Patrick Johnson.
Mayor, there are no changes to the agenda this evening.
Okay, there's no closed session scheduled today, so then we will go right into our presentations, and we have actually, I think, 4 presentations. And the first presentation will be a presentation to recognize North County Lifeline and Vista, a Clean Environment Adoptive Block groups. I see we have some of them here. So we have certificates for each of the people in the groups, and I want to thank all of you for volunteering to help keep our city clean, and we appreciate all of the work that you did, and we'd like to have you come up to the podium as our program manager, Kathy Valdez, who's going to come up, is going to call your name, and I'll come down.
First, we'd like to recognize North County Lifeline. We have Melissa Alcazar, Mirta Ortiz, and Shannon Stubblefield. If you'd come forward, please. And now we'd like to recognize the members of Vista Clean Environment, and I want to give particular thanks to our first recipient, Maria Cerrone de Velasco, who has coordinated this group for the last couple of years. Brian Velasco, Jessica Velasco Cerrone, Christopher Velasco, Martha Leon, Jacqueline Ortiz. Jocelyn Ortiz. Sylvia Mendez. Arlie Mendez. Alma Gonzalez. Heriberto Colores. Alexis Guzman. Marcelino Guzman. Clementina Lopez. Jasmine Morales Lopez. Mara Cruz. Gabriela Salomon. Alexandra Salomon. David Salomon. Maria Salomon. Rigoberto Salomon. Jennifer Lopez. Patricia Lopez. Jorge Armando Lopez. Jose Aquino Luis. Lina Luis. Yasmin Colores. Yair Colores. Ulysses Colores. Erica Tinajero. Anthony Tinajero. Dana Tinajero. Juan Tinajero. Looks like we have a couple other volunteers. I think I might have you and the folks we weren't expecting. Are these additional folks, Maria? Yes? What's the last name? Lopez? Jermaine Lopez? Ivan Ramirez? Mauricio Suarez? Betsy Vargas? No. Crystal Colores? Adina Gonzalez? Here's one. Okay. Okay. Jasmine Morales Lopez. Clementina Lopez. That's it. All right, and we'll do a group photo. We'll need everyone to squish in a little bit.
Congratulations, and thank you to all of them who help keep our city of Vista nice and volunteer their service. Next, we have Monica Emanuel from Del Mar Fairgrounds Marketing Department. Is she here? Do I see? Oh, yes. Okay, and she is going to provide a presentation on the 2015 San Diego County Fair, a fair to remember, and she's going to give you a little idea of what's going on this year. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members. The Del Mar Fairgrounds would like to take this opportunity to extend to you an invitation to this year's 2015 San Diego County Fair. Our theme this year is A Fair to Remember. Join us for a celebration of World Fairs and the centennial celebration of the 1915 Panama, California Exposition held in Balboa Park. San Diego truly is our fair city, and Del Mar Fairgrounds and Balboa Park are both entwined in its history. I am proud to say that the San Diego County Fair is a reflection of who we are as San Diegans. It is about all of us, whether you're a llama, a future farmer of America, or a San Diego Charger. It's a reflection of who we are. It's also a place where we can share our hobbies and pastimes, everything from quilting, farming, painting, woodworking, baking, photography, gems and minerals. The exhibits are nationally recognized at the San Diego County Fair and an important community resource for people to showcase their work. It is what anchors our fair, the exhibits and the agriculture. All of the exhibits are highly competitive. We had over 80,000 exhibitors register this year. So when you go to the fair, I always like to encourage, besides the corn dog and the deep fried whatever, to visit as many exhibits as possible because they truly are amazing. The talent in San Diego is incredible. The theme exhibit this year will be a must-see. Like I said, we are working with Balboa Park, so our theme exhibit will feature a lot of history from the Panama, California Exposition of 2015, as well as recognize world fairs throughout history and their contributions. Everything from ice cream cones to the Ford Mustangs have been released and invented for world fairs. Some of our highlights, the Toast of the Coast is in its 4th year. That's our wine festival. There will be 2 sessions, and it features wines from California and Baja, and over 500 wineries have competed for honors this year. The National Beer Festival is growing in popularity and prestige. Over 978 beers competed for honors this year. We will feature 400 beers from over 200 breweries. And just what everybody needs, we added a festival. It's the Distilled Festival, which will feature the new craft distilleries that are cropping across the United States of America and San Diego County. The lineup for the San Diego County Fair looks pretty good. We've got Casey and the Sunshine Band kicking us off for the summer. Cheap Trick, Peter Frampton, Christina Perry, Kansas, Greg Almond, Colby Calais, Switchfoot, that's just to name a few. It looks like a great lineup. 2 comedians. One of my favorites is Terry Fader. He's coming out. And then on the 4th of July, we have Dana Carvey from Saturday Night Live. I must mention the best pass ever because that is available at your local Vons or Albertsons or online at www.sdfair.com. It's $25 for every single day of the fair, so it's a good deal. And if you'd like to find out any more about the San Diego County Fair, visit us on our website. Thank you so much for your time. We hope to see you this summer at the fair.
Thank you so much. We all look forward to the fair this summer. The next thing on our agenda, we have a proclamation declaring May 17th to May 23rd Public Works Week for the City of Vista. And Mickey Romero, Public Works Operations Manager, is going to come up and accept our proclamation. Is he here? Oh, there he is over here. Okay. Hello. I'm going to take the I'll do this one. Okay, I'm going to read the proclamation here. So, whereas public works services provided in our community are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, the health, safety, and comfort of our community greatly depends on these services. And whereas this year's American Public Works Association theme, Community Begins Here, represents a reminder of the numerous ways public works contribute to the quality of life of Vista residents, and the many years public works professionals have shared the benefits of their accomplishments with the community. Whereas the support of an informed citizenry is vital to the efficient operation of public works, practices such as sewer, storm drain, and park maintenance, tree trimming, graffiti abatement, street repair, fleet maintenance, and solid waste collection, and public works projects and services provide quality of life and social benefits and are among the basic elements of our civilized society and our nation's economic growth and competitiveness. Whereas the year 2015 marks the 55th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. And what will we do without you guys? You do everything in our city. So we proclaim, the members of our city council do hereby proclaim the week of May 17th, 2015 to May 23rd, 2015 as Public Works Week in the city of Vista. So congratulations, and thank you for all that you do for our city. You want to say anything?
Thank everybody and thank the community for making us more efficient by reporting all the things that you guys see out there that are problems with the infrastructure. If it wasn't for the community, we wouldn't be as good as we are. So thank you.
Okay, and then I have one more proclamation, and that's declaring May to be Bike to Work Month. Did anybody ride their bikes here tonight? One, I got one. One person did. So the month of May is Bike to Work Month also, and Friday, May 15th, is to be National Bike to Work Day in the city of Vista. And so I have one more proclamation for that I will read here. So, whereas, and you know what? It's going to be really good when the rail trail gets here, and then we can ride the rail trail all the way from Escondido all the way over to the coast. I think that would be I think that would be a good thing for our city and good exercise to try and get in your 10,000 steps a day that the medical people want us to do. So, whereas the month of May is National Bike Month and Friday, May 15th is National Bike to Work Day, whereas National Bike Month 2015 promotes bicycle commuting, safety, and driver awareness of bicycle riders. The San Diego Association of Government, SANDAG, is sponsoring National Bike Month and Bike to Work Day to promote biking as a healthy, fun, and viable transportation alternative that reduces traffic congestion. Biking is a proven emissions-free transportation alternative that reduces traffic congestion, improves the health and mobility of employees, and provides an alternative to driving alone. San Diego area commuters can reduce their weekly solo commute trips and the demands placed on regional roadways by 20% by choosing a commute alternative like biking to work just once a week. So now, therefore, the mayors and members of our Vista City Council encourage employers to offer incentives to employees to use alternatives to driving alone, such as biking to work, for this day and throughout the year, and do hereby proclaim May in 2015 National Bike Month and Friday, May 15th, 2015 as National Bike to Work Day in the city of Vista. So that is our proclamation, and I hope that some of you will get your bikes out. Take some bike tours this year. We actually have some new bike lines on the streets now that you can ride your bikes hopefully safely, much safer than before. So that is the end of that proclamation. So we'll go back up and go back to our consent calendar. Okay. Our consent calendar, the recommendations on our consent calendar will be enacted in one motion unless some item is removed from the calendar. Any member of the public may remove an item by submitting a request to speak card to our city clerk, and items removed from the consent calendar will be considered immediately following the adoption of the calendar. At this time, I'd like to propose, if it's okay with the council, that we take both our public hearing items prior to the discussion items, if that would be okay. Would that work for you guys if we do that? Okay, that's good. So, but first I have to finish the consent calendar. Okay, so with that, the consent calendar is our items C1 through C10. And so does anybody want any consent items pulled off the calendar, any of the council?
Yes, ma'am. I would like C5 and C6, please.
Okay, any other items? I don't have any speakers that pulled anything off here either of the consent calendar. So with that, I would entertain a motion for the balance of the consent calendar.
I'd make a motion that we adopt the remaining balance of the consent calendar.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. That motion passes unanimously. So with that, we will now go to item C5, which is the establishment of regular meeting dates, adopting Joint Powers Financing Authority Resolution 2015, establishing regular meeting dates. So do you want to report, or do you want to just take it?
I don't need a report. I just have a question. I would like to see us try to streamline government function a little bit, and this is one of those places I think we might be able to do it. And I don't see how taking the time and energy to do a staff report and bring it to council to change a meeting date to do one item and then come back later and change the date back to a regular date. I would like to see we just make it so that whenever there's business for the Joint Powers Financing Authority, that it come to council when it's timely for that without having to change the meeting dates back and forth on our calendar, and then make it so that the minutes for that meeting also come to us in a timely fashion. Is that possible to do rather than coming back and forth and rescheduling meetings?
Councilwoman Rigby, the reason for the regular meetings and the resolution is a change in the law that required actions on bonds to be adopted at only regular, quote-unquote, meetings. And the previous resolution had established the only regular meeting of the authority in the month of November. So in order to transact any bond business in June, we did establish the two regular meeting dates by calling a special meeting of the authority in order to set those up. We could establish a regular meeting of the authority consistent with all meetings of the council. I'm not sure what workload that presents for the clerk to run that up every time, but that could be done. But the reason for this specific resolution is at the request of our bond counsel so that we can comply with.
How often does business for the the financing authority, come before us?
Every 4 or 5 years.
That's what I thought. So I'm thinking, can we just call a regular meeting? I mean, define regular meeting for me, please.
A regular meeting is a meeting which is pre-established by resolution or ordinance of the body. And as I mentioned, the previous resolution established the first meeting in November as being the regular meeting, so that every year the clerk has brought back the minutes of the prior year, which are usually perfunctory unless we happen to have a bond transaction that year.
I was just thinking it would be easier just to, when something like this comes up that we need to deal with, we just define today's meeting as the regularly scheduled meeting as it is given proper notice, correct?
As I said, the regular meeting has to be pre-established by resolution or ordinance. So that was the purpose of today's resolution.
I was just thinking there's got to be an easier way to do this rather than going back and forth on the calendar.
Fortunately, it only happens every few years that we need to deal with bond matters.
But we'll be doing this again in October.
No. Once the council takes action, this part of the process will be complete. I don't believe we'll need another meeting.
Oh, because it says here that
Oh,
we'll be
I'm
coming
sorry.
back to
I did
reschedule a new
suggest that we
meeting.
would go back and simply drop back to one meeting per year, but
Okay. It was a thought.
So would you want to make a motion on that then? Sounds more complicated than it looks.
I'll make the motion that we accept C5, establishing regular meeting dates.
I'll second that motion. Please cast your votes. That motion passes unanimously. The next one was C6, 2015 through 2020 San Diego Regional Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice. So,
Would you prefer a staff report or just have questions?
I don't particularly need a staff report for my benefit, and I don't have any questions. I just have the comment to make. I'm not going to be voting in favor of this. I understand that the CDGB monies are important to the city. I don't like the fact that we have outside influences telling us that we have to do something over here and change our ordinance for something that they want us to do when they are not part of our community. And if we don't change our ordinance to fit what they want, then they're going to hold this over here hostage for us. I disapprove of that mentality completely, and so I cannot vote on this, and I thought people should know why I'm voting no on it.
okay. Anybody else? Sure. You have a staff report, please?
So we have Kathy Valdez, our program manager, who will be giving a staff report this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. The item before you is the acceptance of the 2015 to 2020 San Diego Regional Analysis of Impediments to Fair Housing Choice. As a Community Development Block Grant recipient, the City is required to complete an analysis of impediments to fair housing choice, take action to eliminate identified impediments, and to maintain fair housing records. The City partnered with the County of San Diego and other entitlement jurisdictions in the region to contract for the preparation of the 2015 to 2020 Regional AI. The AI represents a demographic profile of San Diego County, assesses the extent of housing needs among specific income groups, and evaluates the availability of a range of housing choices for residents. It also analyzes the conditions in the private market and public sector that may limit the range of housing choices or impede a person's access to housing. 3 impediments were identified for Vista, which will require changes to the city's zoning ordinance. Those include the extension of affordability covenants to 55 years for density bonus, modifications to transitional and supportive housing provisions, and provisions for farm worker housing and employee housing. These are all state mandates, and by making these changes, it will bring us into compliance with state law. By accepting the report, the city will meet requirements to receive CDBG funds from HUD. That completes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. And I would just like to say that we have to comply with our state mandates. That I don't see that we have a choice, or they withhold our CDBG funding, which funds all of our social service agencies, and also fair housing. I know that's an important thing. So, Councilmember Franklin.
I remember we just approved some CDBG allocations. Aren't we repaying some debt with CDBG money right now for the next 4 years?
We also
Correct. We have a little over $1.9 million left of repayments that'll take place over the next 3, or with this payment now, then 2 following years.
I remember I had asked, I don't know if you ever found an answer to what the length of the covenants was right now. Was it a 40-year length and it's being extended to 15 or to 55, excuse me? Or is it already, was it already?
Valdez can answer that.
It's 45 currently.
Okay, so we're extending
So
it
it's
by 10
extending it to
years.
55.
And this will only apply to new covenants, obviously.
Correct.
And can you give us a little bit of a summary of the new designations and what you think the impacts might be, the new zoning requirements for the transitional housing and for the farm worker housing? What does that mean?
Actually, I'm going to ask Patsy
Sure.
to address that since she
Okay.
deals with the zoning.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council. Patsy Chow, City Planner, Community Development Department. In answer to your question, Councilmember Franklin, the supportive housing, transitional housing, as it was identified in the housing element, we would make provisions to basically allow the particular uses where residential uses are currently allowed without any further restrictions. So we would have to amend our code to do so.
So, two questions. One, what in plain English, what is supportive and transitional housing? And two, is it prohibited in the zones that we're going to now be allowing it, or are we just specifically allowing it?
There are certain...
Is it currently prohibited?
There, for instance, in the multifamily zone, it is currently allowed, and there's clear language that allows that. Where, for instance, multifamily apartment projects are allowed, then apartment projects for supportive housing, transitional housing would be allowed the same, following the same development standards. In the single-family zones, there are certain provisions for transitional housing for families that are comprised of, for instance, battered women with children that accommodates currently in our code. So what the housing element is actually asked for is that we expand that to not be to a certain group of individuals or a certain classification, that it be more broad in terms of who is supporting and transitioning housing for home in those single-family situations.
Does transitional housing include persons released from prison?
Typically, it is for families that are in need of help, low-income households, again, single mothers or with children. It's not so much to address individuals that are coming out of prison, for instance, but it is those that...
Are those kind of, am I asking an irrelevant question, are those kind of transitional housing things, are those allowed now in single-family zones?
That's true.
They are now?
To a certain extent, yes.
Okay. All right. So we are making specific language changes that are required by the state law, but what I'm hearing you tell me is that there's not a substantive change in the actual zoning ordinance in terms of what it allows. Is that accurate, or do you think there is a substantive change? In other words, is this just moving the words around and allowing the same thing, or are we, I mean...
I think it's not a substantive change. It's really making it more, it's making it more clear or clarifying the issue, right, so that there is no doubt in anyone's head.
Rather than, it's sort of a legalistic concept of, do we expressly say it's included?
Correct.
Or is it, it's not, it's currently not expressly excluded, but now we're going to expressly include it?
Exactly.
Okay. And the total amount of CDBG funding that we're receiving was, what was it, $1.5 million or 1.2 million, something like that?
Yeah, just over $1.5 million.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
I think my question was answered. It was how much CDBG money we received last year and will be receiving, and then the question was about the debt that we're actually paying, and how much is that on an annual basis?
I apologize. It's just under $1 million for this current year that we're eligible to receive. And we are paying about $500,000. It'll be close to $500,000 in the 108 loan this year.
And where would the funds come for that, to pay for that if CDBG money was not available?
We'd have to identify a different funding source.
So out of the general funds, probably?
Presumably, yes.
Okay, I think for that reason I will have to support this. And given the fact that it's not substantive, it looks like to me that we're really clarifying language for the most part. I think the most important sentence that I saw here was the Fair Housing Act prohibits discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin, familial status, and disability in all aspects of housing. So I think this is worth supporting. So I'll make a motion to support this.
Okay. Councilor Franklin, did you want to talk again?
Just very briefly. I just wanted to join with Councilwoman Rigby in saying how much I share her dismay at what Sacramento is doing to cities in imposing these types of policies, particularly in extending these covenants and determining what our local housing policies are going to be by holding funding that we're entitled to, that our citizens pay in tax dollars, and we're entitled to our share of. It is pretty dastardly, and I disagree with it, but I think our hands as a city are clearly tied by the actions of Sacramento here, so I see no choice but to approve it.
Well, I agree with you on that.
I agree with you on that also. So if nobody else, no others want to speak? Anybody else?
I was just going to say I'll second the motion.
Okay. So cast your votes when you see the, okay. There. Motion passes with 1 no vote. Okay, so the next thing on our agenda, we've moved our public hearings up. So the next thing, we have 2 public hearings scheduled tonight. The first one is the Optimist Club Little League Fields on 600 Optimist Way. This is a public hearing to consider an appeal of the Planning Commission's decision regarding a request for an amendment to the site development plan for the Optimist Club Little League Fields to modify conditions of approval related to the use of a public address system. So first, we're going to hear the staff report, and then the applicant can present his case or their case, and then after that, the public will have an opportunity to comment. Those wishing to speak should present their speaker slips to the city clerk, and when I call your name, please come forward to the podium and speak directly into the microphone for no longer than 3 minutes. Because we have so many speakers, if you could kind of, consolidate your comments, that would be great, so we know how you feel. Then after that, it's time for the City Council to discuss the item. And then once the public hearing is closed, there's no further opportunity for the public to address the council. So the public hearing is now open, and our city planner, Patsy Chow, is going to be presenting the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, Reader, council members. As I'm not John Conley tonight, I will do my best to answer any questions you may have on this item. But with me here tonight, we also have the Assistant City Attorney, Jonathan Stone, here to my right. And we also have the applicant and the consultant, noise consultant here in the audience, if you have any specific questions for them as well. So with that, the item here before you tonight is a request for a site development plan amendment for the Optimist Club. And just to give you, to basically change the conditions in the permit to allow for a public address system. Just to give you a little bit of background history on it, the project site is located at 600 Optimist Way. The Optimist Club was developed under the planning case 14-170, which was a site development plan that was approved by the Planning Commission back in 1999. The use of ball fields and the associated crowd noise was permitted under the prior approval in 1999. And at that time, there were certain conditions that stipulated that the games would be over by 10 p.m. and then the lights would be out by 10:15 p.m. It also prohibited the use of sound amplification or air horns. And fast forward to 2015, the Planning Commission heard the request to amend the site development plan to allow for the public address system. And on February the 17th, the Planning Commission approved this request for the amendment with certain conditions stipulated. They're identified in the agenda report. This is just a depiction of showing the location, the subject property, the ball fields within the yellow highlighted line there. It's about 11 acres total site, with 5 acres that are actually dedicated to the ball fields. In terms of the zoning information, the subject site is zoned RM10, which is a multifamily zone at 10 dwelling units per acre. To the north, you have what's found as being RM21, 10 and 21, which is actually right now you have apartments there. east and south of the subject site, there are specific plan areas, as well as the E1, which is an estate single-family residential zone. And to the west, also specific planning area, Shadow Ridge, and also addition to that, RM10, also comprised of single-family residential units, and Shadow Ridge Park. The applicant's request to the city was to basically include the following items: to have 4 speaker locations as depicted on the slide by the dots in the middle between the 2 ball fields, that they would be mounted to the backstops and directed in a northwest direction towards the audience that would be watching the games. And the games and ceremonies would be held between the hours of 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., and that there typically no games on Sundays, but that there may be some occasional tournaments or makeup games that would happen, and that could happen, I guess, on Sundays. The project scope, again, is a request to amend the conditions of approval for the site development plan to basically allow the public address system for Little League games with the following recommended staff conditions. And I'll go through them right now at this point. So they basically is limited to 4 speaker locations as depicted on the previous slide that would be mounted on the backstops. And there is a site plan under Exhibit B, page 23 of 109 in your agenda report packet that will depict that. And again, directed in the northwest direction. The system would be permitted to be operated between the hours of 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. The public address system may be used for opening as well as closing ceremonies, but no more than 2 times per year. The system would not be used on Sundays, and the music over the system would be limited to no more than 4 minutes prior to the start of a game. The operation of the system would also comply with the property line noise standard, which would be 50 decibels, that measured at the property line of the subject project site. As part of the staff's review, the prior SDP approval does not limit the usage other than the 10 p.m. Time limit overall, and also complying with the noise standards. The noise ordinance limits the operational noise to be at 55 decibels at the property line of the subject property in the RM zone. However, the staff is proposing a condition that that standard be actually 50 decibels based on the results that we received in the noise study that was produced by LDM Consulting at the request of the city and hired by the applicant to do so. So that's where the 50 decibels comes in as a condition by staff, not the 55 that's identified for the RM zone. So I just wanted to clarify that. The property line noise standard is measured over a 1-hour period and averaged. So just as a note. And there's a graphic on the right side basically identifying the different decibel noise levels and what that would be similar to, being like, for instance, a 50 decibel noise would be a moderate, which would be equivalent to moderate rainfall, just to give an idea of the different levels and what they would be associated with as an example. So per the noise study that was conducted by LDN Consulting, Inc., that is dated April 20th, 2015, the PA system sound levels measured at 3 separate noise measurement locations that's identified in the report. It shows a result that the measured noise levels would be within a range of 39.7 decibels to 48.4 decibels. That's accounting for announcements and music that's being played over the PA system. And although the PA system would not be operating continuously, in order to be a conservative approach, the consultant basically gathered the noise levels assumed to be over an entire 1-hour period instead of just the 15 minutes that would be expected for announcement of the players over the PA system within any given hour. So the consultant, in fact, went and again, in a conservative approach, did the sounding measurement over a 1-hour period, and that's the results that you see under Table 2 in the noise study report pertaining to announcements and music playing. So as part of the staff's review, when we look at the public address system and the noise generated, by it is really dependent upon the location of the system and the volume of the system. So it can be located and it can be controlled to comply with property line standards in the noise ordinance. And the intermittent noise or the intermittent use of the controlled level is therefore not anticipated to exceed the 50 decibels at the property line, again, of the subject site. And it can also be verified in the field at the time of installation to make sure that it complies with that. And staff included conditions or has proposed conditions as part of the project to make sure that the above items are met. So with that, the staff's recommendation is to, for the adoption of the resolution approving the request to amend the site development plan for the Optimist Club Little League fields to modify the conditions pertaining to the public address system at 600 Optimist Way. This concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before going any further, I need to ask the City Council members if they have any disclosure statements, and they need to disclose any of the following: any conflicts of interest that disqualify you from participation, any information regarding ex parte contact or site visits, including any resulting evidence you may consider in making your decision, and any other disclosure that would affect your ability to render a fair and impartial decision. So I need to have each of you report if there are any disclosures. So we'll start with Councilmember Rigby.
Only in that I've received a lot of communication from neighbors in that area, but I haven't, excuse me, I have not been out there. I had asked to be invited to the test, but was not notified of the day, so I did not go. But just I've been receiving emails and letters from residents.
Member Franklin.
I did visit the site last week. That doesn't preclude me in any way from making a decision here, does it? Mr. City Attorney? No? Okay. What kind of distance would my home have to be in order, I don't live that far away, in order for me to have a conflict?
How far away is not that far away?
Yeah.
I live about a half mile, maybe 4/10 of a mile.
Do you hear the ball fields?
No.
Then I don't think you have a
Okay,
conflict.
thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
The only disclosure I have is the communications received, which were entered into the public record.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
I've met with Optimist members as well as league representatives. I've been to the fields more than I can count.
And I also met with Optimist members, and I've been to fields. I actually done opening days there and thrown the ball out, I think, before. And so, several years I've been there, so that would be, but I think I can still make a fair opinion on that. So then we're going to do how many council members have any questions for staff prior to the public testimony? No? So we'll go over the public testimony. And first we're going to hear from the applicant for the Optimist Club. Is there an applicant here? That, Oh, okay, Matt Leonard. He's the current president, so we'll call him first.
Back this way, or do I get on the other side?
Just talk to us.
Okay.
They can hear you back there.
Mayor and City Council, my name is Matt Leonard. I'm the current president of the Optimist Club, a resident in Vista of almost 20 years. So the mission of the Vista Optimist Club is to develop the youth in our community. The Rancho Buena Vista Little League plays on our property for the price of $1 per year. It's been going on for quite some time, since shortly after 1999. The point we want to make as a club is you never know what event in a child's life will be the one that takes them over the top to give them the confidence they need to succeed in life. Okay? So here's the president of the club. I'm here to support the initiative. Our club is in full support for the amplified adjustment. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The next speaker is Jeremy Loudon.
Honorable Mayor, I actually am the acoustical engineer, so I'd like to defer my until after, if there's any questions or anything that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so you're here, if you have any questions of him, he'll be here. Okay,
Correct.
that sounds, okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Do we want to hear his testimony now so that everybody has any questions about it?
Do you want to give, did you want to give testimony about your report? Say anything about your report, or?
Not at this time. I think it's pretty straightforward, but I'm here for any questions.
Do you have questions of him right now?
No,
Okay.
I just wanted everybody to be aware of this report and have an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Debbie Gilgen? Did I say it right? Is it Gilgen or Gilgan? Gilgen? Gilgen.
Thank you for hearing our city council. I'm opposing
Bring the mic down so you can talk right into it.
Sorry.
There you go.
I'm in opposition of the amendment. We were guaranteed this, and it was specific that there was no use of amplified sound because of the amplification and the environmental situation. So the sound amplifies out. And we've gotten petitions from 78 residents in the area that it's not a minor change, it's a major change for us that was specifically guaranteed. And so we oppose it for that reason. And as for the noise study, basically all it proved was that if there's no game being played, and if the Optimist Club is in control of the noise level, they knew when the study was being done, so it just invalidates the results of the test. It's just invalid, it's meaningless information. And the other thing is although it's not the main issue, I have put in many complaints about the crowd noise, and I live at the 500-foot limit, so I should be hearing nothing. Basically, 8.32 Noise Code, Municipal Code 8.32 specifies you're not supposed to hear noise past 50 feet. And I can hear every word that the coaches are yelling and just the crowd noise. So any addition of noise for a PA system is going to take that way over that limit. And we just don't understand why someone coming to our area just can rabble-rouse and create all the noise they want, and we have no recourse for it. So we're just in opposition of it. The tournaments are starting now, and lately the crowd noise every evening is very disruptive. And in that noise code 8.32, it really guarantees us peace and tranquility of our homes. And we lose that 6 or 7 days of the week. Now, if you were in our situation, what would you do if you had nowhere to come home to for your peace and quiet? You know, it's just not fair. So that's my speech, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you. Rita McCarthy, is it McCarthy or McCarty? McCarley? Say it.
McCarthy.
McCarthy.
Rita McCarthy.
Okay. I'm not reading your writing very good. Sorry.
I want to thank the our mayor and members of the city council, and my special thanks to Amanda Rigby for taking our appeal. I'm sure you all received the packet that was given to you in the end of March, which consisted of examples of violations from the Little League, inadequate notifications, residents' complaints, letters and concerns, and also, like Debbie mentioned, the petitions from the Shadowridge Crossing and also the Amberwood. And I just want to talk about two things. One of it is an observation, and the other one is a comparison to two sound studies. We have noticed just since the Little League started to play that the noise level has really been at its lowest point. I've lived there since 1990, so I have been through the whole thing for the last years that they've been playing, and which I thought was kind of unusual. But anyway, when the sound study was, no, I have to tell you first about the ball fields. The ball fields we have, there's 3. The farthest one is to the north of us. They have a middle field. Then the next field that's to our house, this is like 50 feet from our first house in our community. The activities have been played in the center field lately. I don't know why, but anyway. And with that said, I want to just talk about the 2 sound studies that were done. The recent one was done in April the 7th by the LD consultants from Fallbrook. That was kind of requested by the Little League. And it showed the measurements were really within code order, between 52 to 56 hourly. And it talked about the PA system, and that was done on the 26th. They did it from 11 to 12. There was no activity in the fields, and the decimal sound was like 39 to 48. And this was just tested for 15 to 20 seconds for the announcements and 30 seconds for the music. But it said in a given time after the 4 innings, they would probably go 12 to 15 minutes per hour. The announcements will be, they will be announcing the players, and the worst scenario will be 15 minutes, they said. Okay. Now, the second study was done in 2001 of May. It was done on May 6th, the 11th, and the 13th. It was done during the daytime, weekends from 7 to 10. This was done by, requested by the City Planning Commission. It was done by the Investigators Science Engineer, Inc. And their sound study was 53 decibels to 69. If you have your packet, the last page shows a very interesting graph on that particular study. It in fact goes to the same limit as the sound study that the Little League just did on the April 7th.
I need you to wrap up, too.
But as the crowd increases, it goes up to 78. So the decimal is pretty high. And with the combination now of the PA system and the noise, the impact is going to be a lot greater. Now, all I'm going to say is the baseball team, families and friends maybe come 3 or 2 games a couple of times a week, and they go home.
I need you
but
to,
we are
I
on
need
the
you to
other
wrap up for me.
Okay, we are on the other hand, we're subject to the negative noise products by the ball field constantly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Monica Blake.
Hello. I live about 100 feet from the ball field. An appeal means an appeal to reason. These surrounding neighborhoods with 79 signatures on our petition are not appealing on a small discrepancy. There have been outright code violations for the past 16 years, and yet the City of Vista has awarded the ball fields, in spite of their multiple violations, the use of a PA system, adding insult to injury. I could quote noise and light ordinances all evening, but you know that all these people in all these neighborhoods are not lying. What would be the purpose? If there were no noise problems, we would not be here. First, let me ask, isn't it curious that the city canceled the March 24th agenda item for the appeal 1 day after receiving our 30-page packet with years of proof of violations? Second, the Optimist Little League was allowed as much time as they needed to submit a noise study. And third, they were allowed to know when the tests happened, and the PA test was done on a separate day with no games in progress. What can that prove? It's the combination of the crowds and the PA system that will be overbearing. The crowd noise alone is already too loud. The sound study is tragically flawed. This is not about the children's good feelings or parents' memories. This is about quality of life in homes we have invested our lives in the present. The children don't need their names announced to create good memories, as was stated February 17th. Does that mean they had no good memories for 16 years of playing there? We have 2 more neighborhoods since 1999. The ball fields make less sense now than ever before. Perhaps they have outgrown these ball fields. The February 17th minutes state, as soon as they knew about the complaint for using the PA system, Mr. Coots said that they had immediately stopped the use and have not used it since. So, would that have been my complaint letter from June 20th, 2006? Or these dates in 2014? February 23rd, April 11th, June 7th, 28th, and 29th, or July 5th? And that is just my complaints. Many others have also notified the city. So which date did they choose to stop using the PA system? Furthermore, are all these noted violations a good learning experience for the children? To approach this from, I'm almost done. To approach this from a different angle, over the last 16 years, the skunk problem has grown significantly. What eats skunks? Owls, hawks, and coyotes, which have mostly left the area creek because of the noise and the lights. So how protected is our Buena Creek nature area when one sees the imbalance caused by the ball fields? A nature area does not have lights, screams, and yells going on till after 10 p.m.
I need you to wrap up.
Look into it. You owe it to your Vista residents. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Stephen Adler.
Madam Mayor, City Council, good evening. I have a prepared statement which I'd like to read to you. My name is Stephen Adler, and I'm the president of the HOA Shadow Ridge Crossing currently. It is not my desire to stop the children from playing and enjoying Little League Baseball. In fact, I both coached and managed my 2 sons' teams many times. They played in the Carlsbad Youth Leagues, from T-ball through Pony League. Although there were lights used for night games, PA systems either portable or permanent were never used. Most Carlsbad Youth Little League fields are surrounded by homes. It's due to this that there are no PA systems used, so as not to disturb the homeowners. As well, the leagues adopted a good neighbor policy, being sensitive to the needs of the community in which they lived and played in. I would ask that the Rancho Buena Vista Little League do the same. As well, I'm very concerned, as a homeowner in the Shadow Ridge community, of the loss of property value, because noise would have to be disclosed to a future buyer. And in fact, it may also discourage a future buyer. So this not only impacts the Little League, it impacts us as well. I'm a Vista resident. I'm proud to be a Vista resident. And I would ask you to consider opposing the PA system for Little League. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Marty Miller.
Good evening, fellow politicians. I'm here obviously as a supporter of the Optimist Club and of Rancho Buena Vista Little League. I've been involved with both organizations, and I've been involved in the city for a long time. I support the addition of the PA system as long as it stays within the boundaries that you've set forth. If I was a neighbor and somebody wanted to do 90 or 120 decibels, I'd be down here arguing against it too. I know what it's like to have a lot of noise. I wish all the Harley Davidsons in town would abide by noise decibels too. I know the history of the park as well as anybody, so I could sit here for 10 minutes and tell you a lot of stuff. But suffice it to say, when they use the microphone, they use it without the crowd noise 99.9% of the time because they're announcing players. I've been down there. I know they're trying to keep the sound down. Obviously, if you approve it and they don't keep it down, then they deserve to have their hands slapped. but it does add to the game, and it does add to the kids' experience. When they do all-star tournaments, it helps for the all-star tournaments to let people know who they're playing and give the all-stars a sense of pride in who they are. I'll just leave it at that and say I do support it. Again, if they violate it, they deserve to be called on the carpet, and they should be good neighbors with the Shadow Ridge Crossing people. The other new homeowners there came in after the park, and I was told by Mr. Connolly that they'd be informed that the park was there first, so they should expect some noise. And the league has dropped from almost 600 kids when the league opened to around 300 kids now. So there's actually, I would assume, less noise than there was when we first started. The community's older, there's less players, there's less activity, there's less games played, there's less need for Sunday games, and I think with the city council's advice, you could probably referee this situation so that the two parties could get along, and I would hope that they would. Thank you.
Thank you. John Coots?
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me out. I'm here in favor of the Little League. I actually was the one that filed it originally with the city. One of the things that I want to mention, the improvement of the speakers, is something that we tested with much, much larger speakers, and even the test results we got were really limited considering those speakers, and what we propose is going to make the sound even less. So that already is going to be in the right direction. I think the expert, which I haven't actually met yet, but he can maybe testify to that smaller speaker being a little bit better. Also, I want to make sure that with this planning commission meeting we went to, the focus of the meeting really got off on crowd noise, and it sounds like it's doing that again. This is about the PA system. It's about scientific fact. I think we really can lean on what testing was done, and it really does show that at the fence line at 200 feet, we're talking about 1 to 1.5 decibel difference, which any expert will tell you is indistinguishable by the human ear. So this is really about the experience for the kids, because that test shows that we use the PA system and it's a negligible sound to the residents, then all you're really doing, voting against it, is punishing the kids' experience, whether we play 3 minutes of music here or there. It really, if nobody's being majorly affected by it, which they seem to claim, I think it is something that we need to look at as being crowd noise is something that is brought up that's saying, hey, this decibel level gets to here. Well, that's not in contention. Also, the tournaments were brought up. We have 3 weeks of tournaments tops every year. That's it. So there is a window where there's some tournaments. There's a few more continuous games. Crowds get more excited. People get more excited. But really, it's a small window of time that's a necessary evil, I guess, of Little League. Also, you know, I think, again, crowd noise is mentioned as far as property values and whatnot. But that's crowd noise. I really think that the test, I mean, it's a mathematical certainty that this, and we're talking 200 feet to the fence, and one person said they're 100 feet from that fence line. That's another, you know, half the distance further. And then that's probably one of the closest people. I mean, most everybody, I know somebody said we're next to the T-ball field, and which is that northernmost field. Well, that's 450 feet from where the speakers are going to be. So although the crowds might be over there and T-ball plays very little and the crowds are very small, there might be some cheering or coaches yelling, but for the most part, this is something we really need to focus on, because kids really look forward to this. I know we had some people mention that the kids, why don't they ever play on Friday nights anymore? And that was something that they're used to hearing that. If they get to call their name up and hear a little music played, they were super excited about it. Well, they don't think they played on Friday nights this year because they didn't, because they don't hear the thing go off and then the noise go off or get to walk up the plate. And again, if it doesn't show any negative effect, which I hope Jeremy, Mr. Loudon can come over and testify to some of those numbers. I'm not an expert, but I do believe that it is something that we really need to keep our focus on. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Brian Rupp?
Good evening, Mayor Ritter, members of the council. My name is Brian Rupp,
and I'm here tonight because I attended the Planning Commission hearing several months ago, and I'm disappointed and I disagree with their recommendation to the council on this matter. The Planning Commission suggested that additional restrictions and requirements be placed on the Little League's use of the PA system. The city has noise standards and levels that are codified as part of your ordinance. All the businesses and organizations in the city can use PA systems as long as they adhere to those standards. RBV Little League should not be held to different standards than other businesses and organizations. They should have the same freedom to use the PA system as long as they meet the city requirements. I want to thank you for your time, and I hope you take this under consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe Miller.
Hi, thank you. John had covered most of the stuff I want to talk about. Actually, my name is Joe Miller. I'm the current president at RBVLL. And I just wanted to raise a few points. I heard a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of sense as far as the complaints about the sound. I do think that the sound report really does stand on its own for the amount of noise that the PA system adds to what we're doing at the fields. The one point that I want to make is as a volunteer organization, we have a lot of turnover. We have a lot of parents coming in year after year. And it wasn't clear to us, the current board, that the PA system was restricted at our fields. And I think the key point here is that I checked with our past president, and we have been running the music, the announcements, all the stuff that we're talking about today since 2009. And the residents clearly aren't aware of it. They're talking about new sound, additional noise, where that's really just not the case. What we're talking about doing is what we've maintained for the last 6 years. And it is a cool experience for the kids. And just because you didn't have that when you were playing Little League as a kid 30 years ago doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it now, because we can. All of the other ballparks in District 70, that is Bonsall, Oceanside American, Oceanside Valley, Oceanside National, Vista National, and the Vista American Sports Park, all have PA systems that have unrestricted use other than being within noise ordinances. And RBVLL should have that same opportunity. The park is too good. It should not be punished. The kids should not be punished and not have the same experience that all the other kids across the district do. Thank you.
Thank you. That is actually our last speaker. So then I guess I would ask the council for their comments. Anybody wants to take that? You can ask questions of the staff, applicant, the public. Any for clarification? Anybody? Okay. Councilmember Rigby, we'll start you off.
I have a question. I guess it's for Mr. Coots. You talked about the music being played when you announce players. My understanding is that you do play music to announce the players, particular ones or all of them, I'm not sure, and it's a song that perhaps they've picked out. Is that correct?
We have done that in the past, yes. It's what they call walk-up music, like the big league guys do. So it's played when they would walk to the plate for 20 seconds.
Okay, so when you play the music for someone, for one of the players, how much more animated does the crowd get at that point?
It's really actually not at all. I mean, nobody goes cheering, gets excited. It's not like they're, Heath Bell or somebody coming in from the outfield, and jogging all the way across. And I know there's been rumors of, the big PA sounds and rock concerts and monster truck rallies we've heard in some emails. This is really, it doesn't change at all in the volume that we've tested at. They tested at that volume, and the point I was really trying to make earlier was that this is a fixed volume sound that is going to have the same test result at the fence that you would have. So the music, it really kind of becomes insignificant what is played over it. Just at the test, the scientific fact of it is that at this distance, there's 1 decibel sound difference, which is when they test, if we're looking at it 39 to 48, if you take the average in the middle there, it's a whisper. And that's at the 200-foot fence, not 100 feet further to the nearest house or 400 feet
I think
further.
you answered the question I asked you. Thank you.
Okay.
My other question, and I'm going to be very blunt with this, is that we have documentation going back many, many, many years of the Little League's violation of the agreement that you came into this with. And so this isn't the first we've heard from this community talking about this. This has been going on for a long time. So my question is, the recommendations from the Planning Commission and staff to reduce what you're doing, I really don't have a good fuzzy feeling that you're going to be abiding by that any more than you abided by the first agreement that you were held to. And I want to know, what assurance can you stand there and give to me that you would?
What I would first start with is that, as Joe Miller alluded to, we have a volunteer organization that changes over quite a bit. So if it's kind of one of those, it feels like that at the start of the conception of the field and all the way through, there was, if you pass a name around the room and it changes kind of a deal. I think it started out with, oh, we'll just use it for opening ceremonies, and maybe somebody let that go. But as you roll over and you have new members every year, my son's done next year and I'm no longer here and somebody else take my place. I think that we've made efforts now with the sound system that we'd put in place would have the restriction on it to keep it from, being any louder than we would test to show now. As well, as far as to answer your question about past instances of what's going on, that was something that these complaints you say, we heard about it on whatever the date was, which was All-Star Tournament. I think it was June or July, June last year. And we stopped immediately. And we haven't used it since, other than to do the test. So as far as us, not wanting to disturb the neighbors, I mean, most of these people are from these neighborhoods. I mean, they're, by Little League rule, you cannot be not from the neighborhood. So nobody wants to impose on them. Myself personally, I'm gone. I get nothing out of this other than making sure the kids that are beyond my kid get a great experience here at some Little League like this. Nobody, I don't think, maliciously turn the music up or blared out some sound to try to affect neighbors. And as far as the complaints, if the city got them, we didn't. And as far as I've been on the board 3 years now, and maybe Joe Miller has been on a little longer than me as the president, could testify to whether or not he got any, formal complaints. But the second we got the complaint, and I was there involved with it, done. We stopped it right there and haven't done it since. So I can tell you, as far as moving forward, if we have to say we'll put up signs in the boardroom that says, you can do this, or noise to this level, or whatever else it is, the PA system. But I think if we get that fixed PA system we're looking to do, it'll have those parameters involved, which will prevent people from, doing anything more with it. As far as using it in the past, I can't testify to the 10, 15 years we've been there before, but I know when I heard about it, I was unaware that was a total shock, actually. I mean, we were literally calling kids up to the plate before the game. So it's 5 o'clock and at 7 o'clock, we called them up. Each kid would get called up, and that was it. 5 and 7 during the tournament. That's when we got turned in for it. It was almost insignificant, and it was surprising to even know about it then.
Well, I think if the neighbors are hearing it out in their communities, it's not insignificant.
Yeah, well, I think the individual that had to be listening for it, you would have to really be there on the edge of the field listening for it. I don't know who turned it in, but I can tell you by the test results. It's not
I mean, there have been a lot of complaints over the years. So I'm just saying, I don't take anything that one of our even if it were one, which it was not, I don't take that as insignificant. But thank you for answering my questions. I appreciate your time.
And one other thing, I haven't seen the complaints, but I imagine a lot of them were crowd and not PA, because the PA really hasn't been used that much. And then,
I appreciate your time. Thank you. I have more questions for staff.
Okay, can I offer a change to what we have going on there? Because you actually brought that up, saying the music. I think in the staff report it only allows for the 4 minutes ahead of time. But based on these test results showing that there is only a significant amount of change, 1 decibel difference, that the walk-up music or something like that, which again is not showing any negligible effect, would be something that we'd like to request be put in there, because whether we speak in the microphone to call a kid's name or play music for 20 seconds, we think that test result shows that that's something we should be able to do. Thank you.
The other question I have is along the same vein, and because there has been a history of, I would say, flagrant violation of the entered into agreement. It was known what the agreement was, and it was just almost from the very beginning was ignored. What recourse would the residents or the city have? Because the letters that have gone back and forth in the discussions previously have really not been effective. What is the next tool in the toolbox that we would bring out?
My understanding of what occurred in the past, there was one formal code violation request that was put into the record by one of the residents. And as you pointed correctly, Councilmember Rigby, a lot of the other complaints were actually done through letters to the staff, which at that point there were back and forth of letters and replies and emails between staff and the particular concerned residents in trying to address the concern, the noise, and again asking the residents to bring forth any information that could help us and the city address whatever were perceived as being violations at the time. As far as what they have currently in place, obviously, you know, the residents have the ability to file requests for the code enforcement staff to look into it, and that I think that's the one example that I know of that was done in the past.
And so code enforcement is asked to look into it, and they go out there and they find that it's being violated. What happens at that point? That's what I'm trying to get. What's the end result from that complaint?
Then typically, code enforcement staff will ask for whatever is found that needs to be addressed, and they would give them a certain time frame in order for that to be taken care of. And if that is not done within the time frame that is being given to them, to the violators, I guess in this case, then it can escalate to citations at different levels and different dollar amounts if those are not properly addressed.
Okay, thank you. And if my colleagues don't mind, I do have a question for the gentleman who did the sound test. And I thank you for being here tonight so that you can answer questions. As I said earlier, I had asked to be invited to go see the sound test and be there for it, and I didn't get a chance. I wasn't notified of it. So, and I read the report that you provided, but again, several people have commented that the conditions that the sound test was done were not actual conditions or to the same level of normal conditions. Can you describe the crowd for me that day when you were there?
Yes. Hi, my name's Jeremy Loudon with LDN Consulting. Sorry, does that sound okay?
Fine.
Councilmember Rigby, I made note that you weren't notified, so I apologize. It was kind of a spur of the moment. When it was told whenever it fit my schedule, I should try to arrange and get out there because we wanted to make sure that this was brought, the information was brought to the city. So I apologize because I made a pretty quick decision on that.
Thank you.
There is a distinction between the sound testing. We did this. There was previous studies done, like the one that was brought up in 2001, that took into account crowd noise during a game and the average numbers that were put in there, how they fluctuated through the game. We did a similar thing that evening. It was crowds. We gave the hourly average to show a comparison against the noise ordinance. But yes, our sound levels did the same thing. They fluctuated from in the 40s into the 70s. It's just as people speak. In fact, as we're talking here, I can use my sound level meter if you would like. The sound levels in the room are going exactly the same way.
Right.
So the idea was the crowd noise, the existing ball fields are exempt. They're part of the ambient. They're their own issue, or their own item, I should say.
Okay.
So how do we look at the PA system independently? Well, in order to do that, we needed to not have anybody at the fields and run the PA system by itself.
So in that regard, you were not able to pick up the sounds of the crowd becoming animated at the music, introducing their kids. Is that correct?
Correct. They were completely independent tests.
Right. That's what I was asking. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Hold on. I got a question for you. So, as you stated, the crowd noise, for our sake this evening, is actually exempt. So, even if the amplifier incited the crowd, I would say that it's still the crowd noise, right?
You could say that.
The real concern here is the amplifier itself, amplification and the speakers. So with that, your tests show that the amplification at the 200-foot mark is less than the actual crowd noise?
Correct. By 7 to 10 decibels.
7 or 10 decibels. Can you explain what the difference of 7 or 10 decibels might make?
Two sound levels, if they're 10 decibels or more apart, do not add to each other at all. So if you look at the tables in my report, and I do want to point out in Table 2 what we did here to be conservative. For example, the announcements, the first one says 42.4. It was a short-term measurement. We assumed that those announcements were being made the entire hour. But if they're only going to be made for 15 minutes, that sound level would drop 6 decibels. It's a time calc average. So that sound level, instead of being 42, would be 36. So if you try to compare that to crowd...
Is that average over the hour?
Averaged over the hour. So if you compare that to the quietest hourly average that we measured during the game of 51, it's a 15 decibel difference. So the two sound levels combined is just the crowd noise. Now that doesn't mean you can't hear it, because as it was alluded to, crowd noise will go down, the PA system may be used, but it doesn't mean that it's not audible. It just means that it does not add to the overall sound level in an hourly average.
Okay, that's actually helpful to know. Okay. Do you know how far the closest home is to these speakers?
On the right field line, there are some homes that are, I would say, roughly about just over 50 feet from that fence. Because the property line goes back a little bit, then I believe there's an easement, and then it goes up.
So they're about 250 feet away from home plate? From home plate?
From home plate, correct.
And the speakers are facing towards the condos or towards home plate? Or towards the crowd, I should say?
Towards the crowd. When we did the test, they were faced towards the crowd at an angle. The directional ones they're going to put in will be above and pointed down, so they'll actually help a little bit.
Okay. And there isn't going to be any speakers on the T-ball field, which is the little field?
Not to my knowledge.
Right. Okay. It doesn't show on the illustration here that there will be anything on the T-ball field. So I know one of the neighbors that complained is concerned about the sound is close to that. So, and I think somebody said that that's 450 feet away. Okay. I think you've answered all my questions. Okay. Thank you. So, Ms. Chow, is it, let me ask this question first. Baseball season officially starts in March, usually first weekend of March, goes through Memorial Weekend. City tournament, which is all the leagues playing together, usually the first week in June, and then one league in the city hosts the finals for those games. So we're looking at March through, say, June, middle of June, and then if they are hosting a tournament, it could be a random week or two, possibly 3, depending on how many tournaments they actually host in July. Is that what you have?
I don't know to that level of detail, I must be honest with you, as far as the different tournaments or the specific games.
That's okay. I'm just trying to get a general idea of what time frame we're looking at. So I'm very familiar with what happens at Little League games. Been very involved with my children. Actually coached, president for a couple years, so all those things. And I understand how turnover happens, so I do feel for the neighbors, because it sounds like when there was turnover at the board level, the ball was probably dropped. So I'm just wondering if it would be too difficult for the city on an annual basis in March or maybe February to send out a reminder to the league. They have a mailing address and that, so we could send them a reminder maybe to the board as a whole of the rules that the city has in place, whatever those rules may be after this evening. I don't think that would be too difficult, so that the city could have some responsibility, but that would also help with if there is complete turnover, because I've been involved with a league that had a complete 100% turnover at the board, and that does happen, and so the ball does get dropped. So I understand that the situation that you're going through, and to be honest with you, the biggest thing about Little League is you've got volunteers. All these people out here work. This becomes a second job for the president, so I feel for you. And I'm sure you're looking forward to your day of retirement and getting back to your business. But it does become a responsibility. But having said all that, you know, the PA system does add to the atmosphere of the game. The little kids love to hear their name called out. I know my godson was playing at one time and then started realizing that his name wasn't being called out. Wanted to know why his name wasn't being called out. You know, I mean, they do notice these things. And in today's world, where we're trying to get kids to be healthy, stay off the streets, make friends. You know, today we have more kids homeschooled than ever before. And for some of these kids, this is the only way they make friends. My kids went to private school. This is how they got introduced to the kids that they're going to high school with now and playing baseball with. The problem is that Little League, like many of the other youth sports, are competing not only amongst themselves with soccer, basketball, football, lacrosse, you name it, all the new sports that are out there, but they're also competing with the electronic games, the video games. So anything that we can do to inspire these kids to get out there and run the bases, swing the bat, and live healthy lives is something that I'm willing to support. Now, the important part about Little League, you know, and I like Little League, because Little League, to me, is more than just baseball. It is, it generates a sense of community, gets the community involved. You know, half the men that are sitting back there don't even have kids in this league. They're part of the Optimist Club. They're volunteering their time, not just with Little League, but with other parts of the community as well. I belong to Lions. We volunteer our time with youth as well, fundraising, helping them, donating to different community groups. We've donated to Little Leagues, we've donated to football, we've donated to scholarships, you know, but we don't get paid to do that. And Little League was started soon after, right in the late 30s, when we were trying to come out of the Depression, when there wasn't a whole lot of men once they went to World War II around. So it was up to these community groups to go out and coach these kids and give them that father figure. And we've lost a little bit of that in today's society. And I don't want to take away any of that. If the PA system is something that's going to strengthen Little League and allow children to be excited to be out there, I don't want to take away from that. Little League stands for sportsmanship, fair play, and teamwork. And those are things, again, I'll repeat, that are missing from our society and some of our children, unfortunately. And if we can continue to push that, and we've already talked about it. Marty Miller came up here, or one of the representatives, 600 kids down to 300. Vista American had over 350 kids in their league. When I took it over, we had 160. They're back up to 300, but their field was taken away, and that's what took it down to 160. No PA systems, no home field, until we got back to the sports park, where we do have a PA system. And it's not just the PA system, those are very nice fields. But once Vista American got back into their own home fields, they got back up to the 300 mark. Still not where they were at one time, but this shows you that we're losing a lot of our kids to video games and other things that keep them busy. Your kids will be busy. I used to tell my parents this all the time. It's just a question of what are they going to be busy at. So for this, I'm going to support this.
Councilmember Campbell.
A couple of questions for staff. One is with regard to your view of the sound study that was conducted. Does that meet the criteria that the city set forth for an independent sound study to be conducted?
It does.
Okay. So, you know, I've dealt with this issue before, separate outside of the city in terms of sound studies, and it's kind of a complicated field of study. And one of the things that, this may be a question for Mr. Stone, is, you know, our noise ordinance has the average 1 hour decibel levels, and it also has the prima facie violation section in there. One of the questions I would have is the sound that is heard off-site currently, either albeit crowd noise or PA system if allowed, and it's below the average decibel level, would that fall under any sort of violation currently under our municipal code?
It would not. In addition, although it's a technical issue, the sports field itself is exempt from the ordinary decibel limits.
Okay. So that said, the sound study that was conducted meets the criteria set forth by the city. It's a very non-subjective scientific study that says that at the property line, the noise levels within that 1 hour averaged time period would fall below not only the municipal code, but would actually be lower than what is allowable for other locations. So, but that's not to say that you couldn't hear that noise off the property. And I think that's where there may be some clarification that's required for members of the community that are here tonight, that it's not designed to be under not only this ordinance or what's proposed to be allowed completely silent once you are on that property line, and once you leave, it's not, you can't hear anything. I think that's maybe where some of the complaints are derived from, is that you can hear the noise, but it falls below that complaint level. The next question is, how many complaints directed towards the city were received prior to this issue coming before the Planning Commission for this current application?
My understanding is that there was one official filed with the city, with code enforcement, prior to Planning Commission, but several communications via letters, emails, between staff and residents that are concerned about the issue, so informally.
So we've had a few informal complaints, but only one filed complaint with code enforcement.
Correct, that is my understanding.
So, to me, I look at it as this. I have no affiliation with Little League like the deputy mayor does. I have no affiliation with the Optimist Club, so I'm going to look at this from an objective standpoint. From a factual basis, is does this meet our development code? Does this application fall within the parameters of an acceptable use for this site? And do the criteria set forth and recommended by staff and the Planning Commission sufficiently meet and address any concerns from the surrounding community? In my mind, looking at it from a factual basis, looking at the sound study that was completed, it does meet the criteria for approval, and I'll be supporting this evening.
Councilmember Franklin.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera asked if the city could remind the Little League of the rules once a year. I'm wondering if the Little League would be willing to put a sign perhaps in the interior of your facility that would be a permanent sign that would state the regulations. Shouldn't cost much money to erect, but that way anybody coming into the interior of sort of the clubhouse there, I don't know what you call that facility, but would be aware, and that would be something I think would make a lot of sense. That way you can communicate without an intentional effort to future volunteers. Is that an easy enough thing to for you to conceive of doing?
I mean, absolutely. I like the idea of the letter reminder from the city for new board members, and to have signs down. We've got signs, you know, asking people to clean up after themselves and do that kind of thing. So signs for the crowd and PA rules would be absolutely acceptable. I mean, I don't see any problem with that at all.
Okay. I think that's important. I mean, it doesn't have to be a billboard or anything, but if it's in a conspicuous place so that volunteers that are working there and are in charge of the PA system can be made aware, and you don't have, you know, new folks as they come in, they're going to read the signage inside and be aware of the ordinance.
That'd be a simple thing.
Okay. And you have mentioned that you're considering smaller speakers that would direct, and I understand that you don't want to be forced to do that, but where are you at right now on your decision to move forward with that? If you're granted the ability to use amplified sound, is that something that are you where are you in the decision-making process as far as considering using speakers that might further mitigate the sound?
So in amending the site plan and getting all the testing that we needed to get done, that was a very expensive process for us. So getting an updated PA system was something that we couldn't just throw money at without having the approval to do so from the council. So that would be something we'd move on immediately. Okay. We would immediately contact our membership and start working on fundraising to replace that system.
Okay. I mean, I think that's a significant effort on your part to be a good neighbor. You know, the other thing that I would just suggest, and I am supportive of making the change, the other thing that I would suggest is that you pass along to the next president, you know, to reach out to the president of the Homeowners Association or some other representative and have a dialogue and attempt to establish. I get the idea that things are a little rocky right now, but you know, I'd like to see both groups, and that was one of the questions I asked is, you know, had there been a respectful dialogue, I'd like to see more I'd like to ask both parties to make an earnest effort to engage in that dialogue. We're all neighbors here. You know, I want to ask everybody to be a good neighbor to everyone else and make that effort to reach out with a handshake and solve problems. You know, and I would ask the Little League to really be diligent in trying to use your best efforts to comply with the new ordinance as it's amended, because I think the council is, if the council votes to allow this new privilege, then all I'm asking is that you would repay the council and be respectful to the neighbors and the city by really making sure that future volunteers understand that this is an issue, and that by following the ordinance as it's amended, you'll protect the privilege for the future. I think that's super important, and again, just I can't stress enough the need for us all to be good neighbors to one another and work together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thank you. Just to bring up one of the points that was raised earlier, we actually weren't aware of any of the complaints at RBVLL, so it might be helpful if we could see what some of the informal ones were to see if there's anything we could address going forward, because as far as we know, we had the 2014 complaint, which we responded to immediately. So we'd be more than willing to work with the neighborhood.
Thank you very much for those assurances. I appreciate it. One other question of staff that was just raised, and it's a good point. can we make sure that all future noise complaints that are received by the city are forwarded to the Little League such that they're at least aware of the incoming correspondence with regard to noise and that it won't catch them unaware? Is that
yes, certainly we can make them aware of the nature of the complaint so that they can respond. It's the practice of the city, though, to keep the individual name of the complainant, not to disclose that, but the substance of the complaint could be relayed.
Okay, I think that that's sufficient. That'll place some additional onus on that communication process. If you can't reach back out to the person, that'll place some additional onus on you to continue to establish, maintain a channel of communication and work to communicate to the group through their representative every time you have those complaints. And to the extent that we can facilitate in that, I think it would be great. So the one question I had that the deputy mayor asked was, does the noise compound or add if it's simultaneous with crowd noise? And I understand the frustration over the crowd noise, but that's clearly not something that we're going to change. And so from a scientific point of view, at present, I'm convinced that this is not adding to the total decibel level. And because it's not adding to the decibel level, it really is contained within the current, from your perspective, and if I lived behind the ball field, I would feel it's a problem as well. But within the current level of noise, the new amplified sound seems to be contained within that amount, and therefore not increasing the total quantity of noise that you're subjected to. Do you have a disagreement with the science or fact of what
What I wanted to say was, when you looked at what the Planning Commission meeting decided at the last meeting, they added a large number of arbitrary restrictions. And given that, I agree with everything you're saying about the science, what we would like to ask is that we just be given the general use of the PA and not the sort of weird mix of, only 4 minutes before a game or that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to make sure that that the council knew that that's what our position was.
Understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if the mayor would indulge, would you indulge if there are any additional comments on the other side to be heard, so that everybody, would you indulge that, Mayor? Does anyone else have anything to say? I don't want to, it's the mayor's discretion. It's the mayor's discretion.
Is the public hearing closed?
Okay.
No.
You entertain a speaker slip.
Okay, so then they've already spoken.
So we'll use the speaker slip process if there are any other speakers?
Yeah, do you want me to just go through the speakers again?
Well, I certainly would ask if there's, I just want to make sure everybody's heard tonight, and then everybody feels that they had an opportunity to.
Okay, well, I'll go through how about I go through the opposition again? Is that what you'd like me to do?
I would defer to you, Mayor.
I'll ask them. You. Okay, so Debbie, Debbie, you want to speak again?
I'm really outraged that this is now getting changed to from 1 or 2 minutes of music before a game to general use, any use. That is outrageous. That is not what the original request was for. And again, it's just showing that from the very beginning, this was just their intention. They've pushed the envelope. We have communicated when this was first organized. Letters were sent at the beginning of the season, all the time. It's the beginning of the season when the noise starts. Does the noise bother you? Yes, it bothers us. Well, too bad. Live with it. And that's not being a good neighbor. The fact that there has been communication and that's an organizational problem if the rules don't get passed. If that were any other corporation, that would not fly. So I don't know why this institution just keeps getting exempted from anything. If you had guests coming to your neighborhood, 100 guests making noise for hours and hours, and with the tournaments going on and starting now for months, constantly all day. We're talking not an hour and a half, and now they've requested to have their whole request changed to general use. I mean, that's an outrage, and I don't see how that could happen without a new hearing from the beginning, because that was not their request from the beginning. So that would require a new hearing for general use. That's really, really, really pushing them on us, and that is not acceptable. Thank you.
Rita McCarthy, do you want to speak again?
Well, I will say that we were good neighbors at the very beginning. Like I said, I've been there at the beginning. I was the president at that time. Marty Miller was in charge of building the ball field. It was done rationally. The area that we live in is very interesting because we live in a hole, and there's hills on the side of us, there's hills on the back of us, there's a creek, and so the sound just carries right down that creek, 500 feet down the creek, and it affects all our families. I appreciate that they're trying to make the sound less and so forth, and we don't have evidence of it yet and what's going to happen. But this hour that they play is going to be filled. It's going to be filled with music. It's going to be filled with announcements. It's going to be filled with cheers and so on. And all those noises are going to be every hour times how many hours they work. You know, I do want to be a good neighbor, and I know we've had the president of the Little League come over to our board and say, hey, is it okay we do this? And we say either no or yes and so forth. And I do like that dialogue, and I think it's necessary to continue to be good neighbors. But like Debbie said, things have really been pushed, and then what do we do as citizens of our community? You're the city. You're supposed to take care of us, so that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Monica Blake?
I resent the fact that they came here to this appeal hearing, and now that they know that 3 of you are going to vote for it, at least, now they're asking for more. They're asking for more after the Planning Commission committee already heard all of our complaints and limited it. At least they can't use the PA on Sunday, and they can only use it till 9 p.m. And they can only play 4 minutes of the national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance, but they were not supposed to do music before each child is announced. And now, when they think they're going to get this, they're asking for the world. And that's what they've done the whole 16 years. I've been there 17 years, before the ball field. And they just keep pushing it and pushing it. And if your code enforcement department is not doing the process right and getting that information to them, you know, what do we have? What do we have to tell you? I mean, they outright called our complaints lies. Like we're straining over our back fence to hear them. No, that's not the case. Sometimes it's so loud, you can't even hear the music in your backyard because they're playing and yelling so much. It's a travesty.
Stephen Adler.
I have to agree with my fellow residents. I'm disappointed, and I'm saddened that there are people on the council who appear to me to be biased because they do have an affiliation with the Little League. That's just my opinion. Secondly, anything that we have done has been professional, has been adhered to, the protocol has been adhered to, and yet nothing, not even a dialogue, a reasonable dialogue from the Little League has occurred. And I feel that the relationship between them and us is just that. It's them and us. It's become very adversarial. And it should never be like that. If they can't be good neighbors, which they're supposed to be, then what recourse do we have? Do we have to litigate? I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm the board president of our association. I know how much lawyers cost. They're not cheap. And I don't want to get into a litigation. And I'm not stating that we will. I just want to solve this from our organization to their organization. That's the only fair way to do this. They can't have 100% of the pie. It's just unacceptable. And I would ask you to consider that. Thank you.
I know I have, before we go around again, I might like to, maybe I'll take a turn here. And I just would like to say, John, you said it really well, and I know my kids, I coached bobby socks when my girls were younger. For several years, we coached bobby socks. I didn't have boys, but my grandsons both played Little League, but I don't have any affiliation. I sat in the bleachers for a long time, and the hard bleachers many nights. So, but I think it's so important for the kids to be involved in sports, because if they aren't involved in sports, they're doing something, like they said, they're doing something else. So, but interestingly, like Bringle Terrace Park is surrounded by housing, you know, and I'm sure that the moonlight, when they hear the moonlight, a lot of nights they probably are glad when that program is over. And Rancho Buena Vista Adobe, I'm like a couple blocks away from that, but I can hear the music from that at night. Sports Park, there's housing all around the sports park. We have housing around a lot of our parks, and so a lot of them have you know, things that go on in the evenings and during the day, all day. So I think it's one of the, you know, things about living near a park, I guess I would say. But and I don't have, I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I was like when it says no PA system on Sundays. What about tournaments and things? I would think they would need a PA system on tournament days, especially, you know, on Sundays. And they don't play every Sunday, so I think, you know, once in a while on a Sunday, I don't see a problem with it. I mean, I just don't see a problem with these things. And I know that it's loud, but I know that sometimes parks are, that, you know, when you live by them. So I'm going to support it, but I'll go through the speakers here again. It looks like Councilmember Rigby wants to talk again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to say thank you. I know that as the one who appealed this from the Planning Commission back to the City Council, it created a lot more work for city staff and some angst for the community, and I apologize for that. But I thank you for coming here tonight and listening to the speakers and giving this some consideration, and particularly to staff for all the input that you put together in the staff report and being here. Second, I want to say this is a very difficult decision to make. I am a mom. I have 2 kids who are amazing, vibrant people, young adults, and I homeschooled my kids, so I'm not quite sure what the Deputy Mayor was alluding to with the homeschool comment over there. So you want to look at what the kids are doing, but on the other hand, this is a park that came in, the ball fields came in after the neighborhood was built. So it isn't like the neighbors bought their homes knowing that they were walking into this. So I understand where you're coming from, and I feel for you on that. And I think it's important to recognize that there might be a new neighborhood in the area, but for the most part, those houses were there first, which is why this agreement was put into place, was to protect the noise and the quality of life in that neighborhood. The comments and the letters that we have going back years and years, 2002, do indicate, and most of the complaints indicate not just cheering from the crowd, which with the ball field you're going to get that. You're going to have cheering parents and kids, et cetera, and there's nothing you can do about that. But a lot of the complaints going back even to 2002 specifically complained about the use of public address systems. So that is a concern for me. Just as staff recommendation is one thing, and we haven't even discussed that, and already we're being asked for more, which I would not be in favor of playing music to introduce all the little kids. If you want, announcing their name is one thing, but playing music for them, wait till they get to the big leagues and let them play like Trevor Hoffman. Give them something to look forward to. So I wouldn't be in favor of music for every introduction and every kid, et cetera. There has to be limits because it is a quality of life issue for some of the neighbors. The Sunday issue, because I do know the games go 7 days a week, from what I understand. So the Sunday issue, I can understand having a problem with that. And there seems to be some conflict, and I don't know where to get the correct answer for it, because some people are saying we don't play games on Sundays, and then others are saying, yes, we do play games on Sundays. And then some are saying we only play games on Sundays every now and then for special reasons. And I think we would need to define once in a while how often can a Sunday game be played, or how frequently, or how many in a season, so that the neighbors aren't subjected to the noise every single day, 7 days a week. That would be quite annoying, or is annoying. But I do have a question, and I thank my colleagues for bringing up the dialogue that is necessary in any community, in any city, with any discussion that we have. It's important to keep civil and an open dialogue. Going back through some of the letters from the Little League to people who there had been some letters from the Little League in years past, and it was previous boards, obviously, to people who had complained, and back and forth. And so I do know that there had been a dialogue in the past, and I hope that that door remains open, or opens again, that we have a civil dialogue. And I think that we would need to define if we could do something on Sunday. I would also like to see if we could make it provisional, that we would come back and revisit it, because I have an issue with the ongoing violation of the agreement that you entered into. And I understand you're volunteers. My goodness gracious, most of our community organizations are volunteers, and I work a lot with other organizations myself, so I understand that, and the turnover, et cetera. But I do know that there are records that are passed down from one board to the next board, et cetera. And I think that it would be important to make sure that it is passed down and everybody is made aware what the rules are. But I'm not in favor of reinforcing bad behavior by saying yes to, well, you've been doing it all this time anyway, why not? When you came into this knowing it wasn't allowed and did it anyway. So I have an issue with that. But sounds like I'm the only one. But if you're going to do this, I think I would like to see it be provisional so that we can reevaluate the situation and reevaluate the noise at another time. Is that possible to do? I would put that in there. And also not to add Sundays and not to add music introducing the players. I would keep it as the staff's recommendation.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Well, first of all, I didn't mean anything by the homeschool thing. I just talking about the different ways kids are educated today, my kids included, actually. So, and I did want to address one item that came up, and I am not affiliated with Little League at this time. I know that came up a couple different ways. I have coached in the past. I've been the president in the past. I have no kids playing right now. In fact, if anything, I'm impacted by the high school. I live by the high school. I get to hear the bands practice on Wednesday and Thursday, and football games on Friday, whether I'm there or not. And, we have baseball going right now, so I get to hear it as well. So I understand how the neighbors are impacted, especially when I'm outdoors. I can hear it. I guess I'm different. It affects me differently. It doesn't bother me. So that's where I'm coming from on this. But I think something that needs to definitely be addressed is the concern that we're giving away the farm here. I look back at the original proposal that was brought to the Planning Commission. And it says, any use of a public address system shall be limited between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. So that is what was being proposed. My understanding is the Planning Commission, modified that, and that's what they agreed to. But of course, once it gets appealed to City Council, then we are the next governing board and can make our own modifications, which could be modifying back to the original proposal. But I think there's some things that should be discussed, or addressed, I should say. So first of all, I would like to close the public hearing and adopt City Council Resolution number 2015 approving an amendment to the site development plan for the Optimist Club Little League fields to modify conditions of approval related to the use of a public address system. I believe that we can, well, first of all, I'd just like to go ahead and make sure that part of this is that the sign is mounted, and I think in your boardroom would be the best place, so that the board members are aware. I also feel that the city has an obligation to send out a reminder letter once a year, maybe to all the leagues, just of what the rules are regarding a PA system, regarding noise, trash pickup in our city parks, anything of that nature. I believe on Sundays, I think the league would agree to this. If we could just start at noon, as far as PAs go, you may do your games before that, but PAs at noon. Typically, tournaments, especially All-Stars, they wait till church is over, so most of the games don't start till noon, so I don't think you should have heartburn over that. And I'm okay with the 9 a.m. I know that's not what you originally asked for. I think 9 a.m. is a good number, especially on Saturdays. Some people want to sleep in, although I don't think they're going to hear it, but I'm good with that. But other than that, that's my recommendation.
Is that a motion?
That is.
I'll second your motion. And Councilmember Campbell.
I was going to make essentially the same motion, keeping the recommendations from the Planning Commission of item A and F, and I'm fine with the Sundays at noon, so.
Would that be Sundays from noon until 9 p.m.? Is that or would we make it earlier? Or can I ask, just with a show of fingers, how many Sunday games do you really want amplification for, as far as tournaments and things? Is it a small number? Okay, then what if, would 5 be more than sufficient? What if...
I'm not willing to limit it as far as the motion. What's his motion?
Well, what I was going to suggest is perhaps we could ask the Little League to specify no more than 5 Sundays and do so, in a letter in writing. We could put that in the ordinance to the city, specifying which 5 dates, and they could, with 5 days' notice, pick one of those dates.
And I don't think they know, because I think some of them are makeup games for rain.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean,
they won't know. They won't know when ahead of time how many they'll need.
Well, but I'm saying, if we limited it so that, there's no more than X number of Sundays per year.
I would say from an enforcement perspective, it's very difficult to enforce something that's limited to a certain number of days when we're not intimately involved with what goes on every specific Sunday.
I understand the impracticable. So what? So till what time in the evening on a Sunday? I mean, I am a particular believer in having some peace on a Sunday, or at least one day a week. So I mean, what are we thinking there? Do we make it an hour earlier to 8 p.m.? Or do we want to leave it at 9?
I'm hesitant to modify it only because I know it's going to be 1 or 2 times a year if they have All-Stars, or if there's rain, which I don't think they probably had any rainouts this year. It's less than 5 automatically. I mean, when I coached, we never played on Sunday, other than All-Stars, which was usually 1 or maybe 2 Sundays.
Right.
In July.
I'm trusting that. I actually think the restriction on Sunday is reasonable, but I'm willing to bend on that with your assurance that it is just going to be a few Sundays. Because if I lived there, I'd probably be pretty delighted to have one day reprieve as well. So I think that's fine. So you're moving to amend Exhibit A to allow PA system use on Sundays between the hours of noon and 9 p.m.
On Sunday.
And is my understanding correct that your motion makes no additional modifications to Exhibit A?
None other than, just the sign and the notification.
And the sign.
Yeah.
And the sign. Anything else? The sign and the noon to 9 on Sunday.
And sending the letter from the city.
And sending the letter from the city once a year. Okay, so those are the 3 things that would be added to Exhibit A.
So on this page here, your motion keeps A and F, adds the signage condition. Are we keeping condition E, the music over the address system, for the limitation of 4 minutes? So we're only, so I think to address Councilman Franklin's question is, your motion would put the following conditions: public address system may only operate between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m., and the operation regarding the 1-hour average sound decibel level, adding a sign that lists those conditions, and the city would send them an annual letter.
Yeah, I hadn't originally said the 9 p.m. I just said the 9 a.m.
The 9 a.m. Okay.
That's what I had originally proposed, 9 a.m.
So are you proposing that we don't have a 9 p.m. ending time?
Yeah, that was my original motion, just the 9 a.m.
What happens if you're in the middle of a game and it's you're almost done and then it's 9 o'clock?
Would you be willing to put the 10 o'clock?
Is it?
Yeah, well, they have to, by 10 o'clock they have to, yeah.
We're not exempting them from that.
Oh, yeah, no, they have to be, like, lights off at 10 o'clock, so.
Is it that onerous an imposition if the game's going past 9 p.m.? First of all, how frequent is that? Is it?
The public hearing's closed.
I understand. Okay, then I'm asking the council, it seems to me to be reasonable to say if the game's gone past 9, and I would ask one of 2 things. A, if the game's gone past 9, to cease to use the PA, or B, can we compromise at 9:30 p.m.?
Probably the crowd noise is going to bother them more than the PA system, I'm guessing.
I think we're talking about the PA system, which...
I'm not talking about the crowd noise.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the crowd noise. I understand the separation of the issue. I mean, if that's not the motion, that's not the motion.
Yeah, it's not the motion.
Okay.
I mean, if it was, no, it's just...
How about we call for the question?
I have a point of clarification, if I might. Did you say that you were not going to include in your motion, E, music over the public address system shall be limited to no more than 4 minutes prior to the start of the game? So you're eliminating that from your motion?
Just a point of clarity. So B, C, and D are also eliminated?
Yes.
And then I would recommend that there be a cutoff on the hours of the PA operation. 10 o'clock would be fine, but there should be some specification.
I just assumed it was 10 o'clock.
Okay, 10 o'clock.
automatically. Yeah.
Okay, 10 o'clock then.
Because the original Planning Commission was 7 to 10, so I'm modifying it up to 9 a.m. from 7.
Okay, 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. Okay.
So basically it's A and F, right? So 10 p.m. and modified 9 till 10.
Could I ask
9
to have
10.
the staff read back to us what they believe the motion is and what they will codify the motion as if it's approved?
My understanding is that item A, the public address system may only operate between 9 a.m. and 10 p.m. The public address system can be used on Sundays starting at noon. And that the last item F, the operations of the public address system may not exceed a 1-hour average sound level of 50 decibels of the property line of the subject site. The sound level of the public address system shall be measured at the nearest property line at the time of installation to verify that it meets the standard. That's what I have.
In addition to the sign in the boardroom.
In addition to the signs and the, thank you,
Right.
and the reminder letter.
Okay, so I got to call for the question. That'd be okay?
Yep.
Cast your votes. The motion passes 4-1. So, moving on to our next public hearing. We might be here all night, you guys. Public hearing number 2, massage establishment and massage therapist regulations. And so anyone wishing to speak should present their speaker slips to the city clerk. Everybody kind of keep it down because we're going to keep our meeting going so we can get out of here tonight. So kind of keep your voices down, please. Once the public hearing is closed, there's no further opportunity for the public to address the council. So I'm going to say the public hearing is now open. And Economic Development Director Kevin Ham and Management Analyst Rachel Bell will present the report. And I don't think, do anybody have any disclosure statements where they need to disclose any conflicts of interest on this one? Anybody? Any favorite massage departments? Places? Okay, onward. Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Kevin Ham, Director of Economic Development for the city. And with me is Rachel Bell. She's our Management Analyst, and she'll be giving the presentation this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. California Assembly Bill 1147, the Massage Therapy Act, became effective January 1st, 2015. AB 1147 restored the authority of cities and counties to impose land use regulations on massage businesses, but restricted the types of regulations they can impose on individual massage therapists licensed by the California Massage Therapy Council, CAMTC. Vista Municipal Code, Chapter 5.56, currently outlines regulations for individual therapists and massage establishments operating in Vista. Some provisions in the current Municipal Code chapter are not in accordance with the new standards created by AB 1147. The proposed changes to VMC Chapter 5.56 include the removal of the individual certificate of compliance requirement for individual therapists, but imposes additional requirements for massage establishments. Most significantly, massage establishments will now be required to obtain a massage establishment permit, which includes live scan and background checks for all owners of massage establishments. Establishment owners must pass a background check before the permit will be issued. The ordinance also requires that a massage establishments report employed massage therapists to the city and keep copies of their CAMTC certifications on file. The ordinance also imposes a series of operational controls on massage establishments, including, among other things, limits on operating hours, hygiene standards, requirements that massages be provided only by certified massage therapists, and a ban on the service of alcoholic beverages. In addition to the permitting changes, AB 1147 also reverses a shift in the land control use reverses a shift in land use control of massage businesses from local control to state control. With the passage of AB 1147, Vista will resume applying the land use control found in its development code. to create consistency between VMC Chapter 5.56 and the Vista Development Code, a definition for massage establishment has been added to Chapter 18.02 of the Development Code, which is consistent with the definition found in Chapter 5.56. Staff recommends adoption of the attached ordinances, Exhibits 1 and 2. The adoption of Exhibit 1 will amend the Development Code Chapter 18.02 to define the term massage establishment. The adoption of Exhibit 2 will amend Vista Municipal Code Chapter 5.56 to create a massage establishment permit to allow for better regulation of massage businesses. Exhibit 2 also removes language and requirements no longer allowed by AB 1147. This concludes my report, and staff is available for any questions.
Okay, Council, we have no speaker slips on this, so we have no speakers. So, Councilmember Campbell.
I would move that we close the public hearing and adopt the staff recommendations.
I'll second it. No.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Motion passes unanimously. Okay, now we have to go back. Let's see, where are we? We got to go back to our discussion items, right?
May I ask if we may take a brief 3-minute
You got it.
recess?
3 minutes. Take a breather. Here we go again. Okay, so the first discussion item, there's 4 discussion items. Number 1 is the fiscal year 2014-15 third quarter financial report, and our Director of Finance and City Treasurer, Dale Nielsen, will present the report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Presented to you this evening is the third quarter financial report for the 9 months ended March 31st, 2014. At this point in time, all general fund revenues and expenditures are within budgetary expectations. Exhibit 3, starting on page 10 of the report, provides budgetary and actual revenue information for the general fund as of March 31st. As of that date, the general fund has received almost 71% of its total budgeted resources for the year. There are a number of large revenue item payments that are received in the fourth quarter, so it's not unusual to be under the 75% mark at this point in time. A couple of those large items include a VLF property tax compensation payment and a triple flip sales tax payment reimbursement that occurs in, well, actually this month. Those 2 items in themselves total a little over $5 million. And also a number of revenue items that we receive in the beginning of the fiscal year in July are actually accrued back to the prior fiscal year. Exhibit 5 on page 16 presents similar information for general fund expenditures. These are at about 60% of the total appropriated amount for the fiscal year. There are a number of recommended operating budget adjustments at this time. All are funded with either increased revenue estimates or use of reserves, and therefore have no impact on the estimated fund balance at year end. Detailed discussion on these items can be found on Exhibit 2 and the Exhibit 2, which is on page 8. And there are also 2 CIP budget adjustments resulting mostly from project reviews and preparation of the 15-16 CIP budget. The resolutions to amend those 2 operating and CIP budgets are found on Exhibits 9 and 10. There's 1 recommended personnel change and discussion on that item can be found on Exhibit 11, which is on page 25. I'd be happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions, Council? Is this a receive and file? Is that what this is? Or is this a? Oh no, we have to receive. It's a. We have to. Yeah. Oh yeah. Question. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking. Councilmember Campbell.
No
sorry.
question. I was just going to see if we need to make a motion to receive and file this or adopt the resolution. Yeah, I would make that motion.
I would second that.
Please cast your votes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Our second discussion item, draft fiscal year 2015-16 operating budget. Assistant City Manager Ali Zimmerman and Management Analyst Laura Johnson will present the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. This item is your draft 2015-16 operating budget, and Laura Johnson will be presenting the report tonight.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this discussion item is to review the draft operating budget and receive direction from City Council prior to presenting the final budget on June the 9th. Staff began preparing the operating budget for fiscal year 2015-16 last fall. Revenue estimates were prepared, and based on available resources, a spending plan has been devised that we feel best meets the needs of the residents and businesses of the city, as well as council goals. The agenda report provided a broad overview of all funds, but especially of the general fund. This presentation will begin with a review of general fund revenue and expense estimates, and will end with a discussion of the 7 major spending categories. The total operating budget is $121,377,059. It is accounted for in almost 20 funds, most of which are restricted by law as to the type of activity for which the money can be spent. As this slide visually illustrates, unrestricted monies, or general fund monies, which are shown in green, fund the bulk of the city's expenses, including, for example, all of public safety. Restricted monies, or non-general funds, which are shown in blue, are a major funding source for certain kinds of activities. Most of Public Works, for example, is funded by non-general funds. The first area to be reviewed will be general fund revenues and resources. Page 17 of the budget document provides a summary showing historical data as compared to the proposed 15-16 revenues. All revenues are estimated in detail early in the budget process and are evaluated several times before being approved by the city manager. The general fund revenue and resources are estimated to be $70,440,498. This includes $63.5 million in new revenue, as shown on the chart on the green line, and an additional $6.9 million from other sources, including a beginning fund balance of $1.3 million. A majority of revenues come from just a few sources. For example, property taxes at $18.9 million, sales tax is $16.3 million, charges for services are estimated at $10.1 million, and franchise fees are at just under $3.3 million. The remaining general fund revenues are made up of a variety of sources as shown on the slide. Proposition L half-cent sales taxes are another component of general fund revenue. Proposition L revenue is estimated for 15-16 at just under $7.4 million, and we'll be able to fund $1.2 million of fire salaries through at least fiscal year 2020-2021. If actual revenues exceed the annual increase rate of 2%, Proposition L sales tax may be available to fund fire salaries for a longer period. The last element of revenue I would like to bring to your attention is the use of reserves. These monies are not part of the city's emergency reserves. These are monies that were set aside in prior fiscal years and reserved to fund future expenses, such as facility improvements, vehicle replacement, and Proposition L debt service. Page 24 provides additional detail. As shown, $2.1 million in general fund reserves will be used this year. Purchases funded by all reserves include the replacement of 11 vehicles, including 2 fire pumper trucks. Before we move to a discussion of expenses, this slide shows a comparison of general fund revenues to expenditures. As you can see, all the city's sales and property tax categories are needed to fund public safety costs. The next area to review will be estimated expenses. Page 19 of the budget provides a summary showing historical data as compared to the proposed 2015-16 expenses. General fund expenditures are projected to be $62,403,943. An additional $7.7 million is needed for transfers out to pay debt service and to fund subsidies to non-general fund budgets, including $247,885 to the Senior Nutrition Program, $258,600 to the Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District, and $362,427 to the Wave Water Park. This brings total general fund expenditures to $70,113,600. With funding of $70,400,498 in available revenue and resources, the June 30th, 2016 ending fund balance is projected to be $286,898. For the remainder of this presentation, we'll be looking at expenditures. The budget document is broken out to 7 spending categories. The first page of each category includes a list of goals for the coming year. While staff has consistently managed expenditures, there are several areas of expense that the city has limited or no control over, including pension costs, minimum wage increases, prevailing wages, and electricity, water, and fuel costs. Vista has always been a lean city. After the pain of the recession, we have worked very hard at maintaining a lean budget. while continuing to move forward. By and large, the 2015-16 budget is very similar to the 2014-15 budget. Much of what will be discussed in relation to expenses are how the 15-16 budget differs from 14-15. General government is the first category of expense we will review. A summary of this category can be found on page 68 of the draft budget document. General government expenses are approximately 12% of the general fund and total $7.5 million. Something you will immediately notice is that the 15-16 expense is much lower than 14-15. This is because the $4.5 million the Council authorized to pay off the Safety PERS side fund was accounted for in the non-departmental budget unit. 2015-16 changes to this category include the addition of an office specialist, a city attorney investigator, and a vehicle for the investigator. All general government expense is accounted for in the general fund. A summary of the public safety expenses can be found on page 110. This section includes law enforcement, school safety, and fire services. Public safety accounts for approximately 64% of general fund expenses and totals to just under $40 million. It requires all of the city's tax revenue to fund just this area of expense. $1.3 million of the difference between the 14-15 and 15-16 budgets is the purchase of 2 fire pumper trucks, which will be funded by reserves, as mentioned earlier. The summary of community development budget units.
One second, if I might just interject. Does the council have any questions on general government or on public safety prior to going on to the other units?
John, do you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about excess funds for Prop L. You had mentioned that we might be able to fund future staff salaries from Prop L revenues.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to sound like I don't know what I'm talking about as the new guy, but this is something that is very important to me. I do not think, how long, when Prop L was devised and passed, what was the original proposal for how long we were going to fund ongoing staff salaries from Prop L revenues? My understanding was it was 3 years. Am I wrong in that understanding?
No, it was in perpetuity for the 30 years of the life. So it was $1.2 million that was going to be pledged towards the fire department, and approximately at the time it was about $300,000 to $325,000 that was going to be pledged towards law enforcement. Prop L fund didn't materialize as a result of the recession, and therefore we backed off on the law enforcement funding, but are attempting to maintain the fire funding at $1.2 million for the life of the bonds.
So it isn't just general, it isn't general staff, it's only fire.
Yeah, I understand that. You know, I question the wisdom of a plan that puts us on a, and even if it is 30 years out, what is it, 24, 25 years out now? We're 25 years out with a collision with not having the funds to pay these salaries. And my question is, and I know it's a long-term one at this point, but what is the, you know, the numbers are going to get bigger in 30 years from now. What is the plan for how we're going to not have to lay people off and how we're going to transition off temporary funds for permanent staff?
Well, the goal is that if it doesn't continue to extend years out, as it has in the past few years, that we would need to plan for the transition back to the general fund supporting that $1.2 million.
You know, I just think it's important for us to be making a long-term plan and have a vision. I don't think we have to identify it exactly right now, but I think it's important for us to have a vision for, I want this tax at some point to go away. I intend to be here in 25 years, and I will, you know, I'll energetically advocate for the end of special taxes. So I just like to know that we have a plan, that we're not going to have to reduce staffing in a critical public safety area. I mean, you know, I don't understand the issue as well as I'd like to, but I am concerned about temporary funding being used to pay permanent employees that those billets aren't going away when the special tax revenues go away.
Okay. And just to clarify, in 2006, the ballot language that was presented before the voters did include not only the capital costs, but also monies towards public safety, which includes both fire and law enforcement. So we're not doing anything that was out of the intent that the council placed on the
No, and I
the
appreciate
ballot.
that clarification. But I would still reinforce my question about what's our long-term plan to, is that something that we're considering?
Well, we're very cognizant of the fact that if, let's just say we were in 2018-19 right now, and if we were 2 years away or 3 years away from not being able to fund the fire salaries going forward, that we would start to make provisions within the budget to wean ourselves off of having to do that.
I would like, and I'm not suggesting that the council's ready to vote for this, but I would like for us to have a shorter term, like a 5-year plan to transition off of funding staff salaries through temporary taxes, and to see us use whatever excess funds exist for debt service advanced principal payments, so that we pay our debt service off faster, and so that we mentally make the plan to transition to promise our citizens that we're going to continue the level of staffing for fire service, and we're going to make that a priority through the general fund. I don't know how we do that. It's a bigger question than I can personally tackle, but I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see it be a goal for 5 to 7 years for us to plan to wean ourselves off of that and dedicate some of those funds over time to additional principal payment, so that we can go back to the citizens and report after 22 years that we paid Prop L off and we did good things for the city, and not come back and ask for an additional extension of the Prop L sales tax. That's my perspective. I don't, at some point maybe I'll, if we can't include that as a goal, maybe I'll offer it as in some other measure or form. That's what I had to say.
Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Aguilera. Deputy Mayor Aguilera.
Yeah, I think those are some good ideas. I mean, I think it's worth exploring for sure. My question had to do with the general government. Of course, I circled the 4.7 million, and you did explain that. So was all 4.5 million towards the PERS payoff? Was that what that check was for?
Yes, it was.
The whole amount? Okay. Wow. All right. So I do remember that. I just didn't remember it was quite that big, but all right. Public Works, so park maintenance, I noticed goes down like $500,000 from last year.
Do you want to go section by section, or do you want to skip ahead?
Well, she covered it in this thing, so I figured I'd just, or at least in my
We
mind
did provide
she
the overview, but we have a little bit of detail about each spending
Okay,
category.
I'll wait then. So maybe the explanation's ahead.
Back to community development. The summary of community development budget units can be found on page 152. Community development represents 10.4% of general fund spending. Changes since the original 14-15 budget include the addition of a senior engineer, a principal planner, and a building inspector. As shown by the blue columns in the chart, you can see that non-general fund monies play a more significant role in funding expenses. The size of the sewer administration column is a bit daunting, but this budget unit carries the bulk of spending for sewer services, which are paid to the Encina Wastewater Authority.
Are there any questions on community development?
Redevelopment and housing is summarized on page 202. There are no general fund monies used for redevelopment activities. At first glance, it would appear that the budgets for these units have been cut in half, when in fact they are almost identical. There are two reasons why 14-15 appears to be so much higher. First, an additional debt payment was made in the CDBG fund budget unit. Second, $1 million of Cal Home program grant expenses were budgeted in 14-15. Unspent grant monies from the current year will be carried forward to 15-16. The summary for Public Works, which is 4.7% of general fund expense, can be found on page 224. Total expenses for this category has actually gone down as compared to 14-15. Some of this is due to 14-15 park projects, which were funded by over $500,000 in park development fees. Also, lighting and landscape expenses are going down as a result of retrofitting streetlights with energy-saving LEDs. However, this is an area of expense which may be most impacted by prevailing wages, electricity, water, and fuel costs. As you can see by the blue columns in the chart, a lot of public works funding is coming from non-general fund sources. About 40% of total expense in this category is related to delivering sewer service.
Most of the questions were answered. So on the park maintenance, you mentioned something about development fees and that. Is that part of that too?
No, we budgeted for the park projects in 14-15, which makes that year appear much higher. Some of the programs that we have are rubberized play surfaces, which was $162,000, park restroom improvements, tennis and basketball lighting at Thibodeau.
That's for this year coming up?
That's work that we
They're budgeted in this
14-15.
Okay.
Now, this was the money that was set aside by the council earlier in the year to do a lot of different park projects.
Okay.
Shade sails, alike, well exploration.
Thibodeau. Right. Okay. Thank you.
8.7% of general fund expense is related to recreation and community services. The summary for this area of expense can be found on page 278. There are no new positions in this category. However, recreation and community services is an area impacted by minimum wage increases. 15-16 temporary salaries are anticipated to be slightly more than $100,000 over 14-15. Uncertainties in this category of expense include the loss of 2 food preparation contracts, which had been accounted for in the senior nutrition program, and the introduction of the Moonlight Presents series in cultural arts.
Are there any questions?
The final category of expense, internal services, is summarized on page 314. Internal service budget units exist solely to support and are funded by charges to all other budget units. There are virtually no outside sources of funding. Group insurance costs account for the largest increase in risk management, but about half of those costs will be absorbed by the fund. Fleet maintenance, which is managed by Public Works, will be replacing 10 vehicles in 15-16. All but one will be funded by reserves set aside in prior years for this purpose. This non-general fund spending category totals $13.2 million.
Any questions about internal services?
Sorry. Fleet maintenance, is that just for all our vehicles, or is that, and that's spread across all?
Those are all vehicles except for fire.
So they are budgeted in fleet maintenance, but charged to the departments that use the vehicles as an internal service fund.
But they're allocated proportionately, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Franklin.
I had a quick question, just jumping backwards for a second. What is our expected subsidy for the Wave Water Park for the
$362,000.
Yes.
Okay.
Councilman Franklin, it's expected to be approximately $362,427.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one speaker. Would like to hear a speaker? Cliff Kaiser.
Oh, we're not. Are you done? Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Real briefly, you've heard me be critical of the city's code enforcement efforts, and I would encourage you to consider beefing up code enforcement. It was on this part of the discussion last week. I mentioned it before. We had some discussions here this evening about code enforcement, and you guys create all these laws and all these codes, but if they sit there unenforced, they're useless. And just as a side note, code enforcement sounds kind of bleak, and you're creating these codes or these laws to enhance the community, in my mind, I think, right? We want the community to be vibrant and great, and we create these laws to make sure everybody gets along. Change the name, make it the Community Enhancement Team or something like that, but let's get some more money in there.
Thank you. Okay, anybody?
Just a
Councilman Campbell.
quick comment to Mr. Kaiser's comment about code enforcement. That's something I think the city manager can say from the first couple months that I was on the council. I've asked for more enforcement action throughout the city. Assistant City Manager Zimmerman can attest I've opened a significant number of code complaints with the city. And over the last 2 years, I feel that the city has done an excellent job in addressing those concerns throughout the city with code enforcement, with the staff that we have and the funding that we have available. I'd encourage you, if you see things in the city that are specific code violations, report them to the city, because code enforcement has been very responsive at addressing those issues. So while it's unfortunate we don't have a dozen code enforcement officers roaming the city addressing every little small violation, it helps us out substantially if you or anyone you know reports those violations to the city.
Okay, so Councilman Franklin.
Do fines that we levy through the code enforcement department, do those fines come back to finance code enforcement?
They're general fund revenues, so they do come back, but they aren't specifically allocated necessarily to code enforcement. Code enforcement is general fund.
And I'm not asking you if you don't know right now, but what is our revenue from code fines? If you need to get back to me on that, that's fine.
I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of for street sweeping in particular, is like $380,000. We have false alarm fines, what, about $70,000?
And parking fines are proposed for close to about $425,000. Red light, let's see, false alarms, $85,000. Vehicle code, that would be most of your parking, is close to $325,000. Our total fines and forfeitures category, which includes a number of things, not just administrative citations, is about $1.5 million projected for 15-16.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll follow up with the staff on this later, but my general thought and question there is, are we able to generate, can it be self-sustaining? I'll follow up with the staff on that later with the code enforcement, because I agree with the point about more code enforcement. I just, there's still things we have to figure out how to pay for it.
I have one other speaker, Val Brown.
Just a follow-up on these comments. I had a conversation with the city manager just this week about the same thing, and we talked about possibly getting a little bit more proactive. So my question is, what would it take? Because right now we are a reactive organization when it comes to code enforcement. What would it take to be a little bit, I'm not saying we're out there patrolling, but some sort of patrol. I mean, we need to be a little bit more proactive. The conversation we had on Monday was about two businesses arguing about signs or what have you. Maybe if we picked a particular subject, whatever that might be, graffiti is my biggest concern always. But I think our maintenance crew does a pretty good job of picking up most of the graffiti.
Well, on graffiti, keep in mind, if it's on public property, Public Works takes care of that. But if it's on private property, we cannot just go onto that private property and remove it. So there's a process, and I know there's a frustration, not only from the council's perspective and sometimes from the public's perspective, that graffiti stays on buildings for a number of days or a week in some cases, or maybe more, but it's a notification process, and if the owner of the building doesn't remove it in a timely manner, then we're forced to keep on them. We cannot go onto private property and remove it.
So I guess getting back to the question is, what would it take money-wise, and where would we take that money if we wanted to go after that graffiti? Because that obviously you're talking about, it just takes more man-hours to stay on top of those property owners. Some of them are out of state, some of them are definitely not in our county. Others are right here in our own city. They're just not responsive. So, you know, we can generate fines, I guess, if we have to, in order to get these people's attention. But there's other things that, you know, as I drive around town, I see illegal structures, and that's some of the stuff that I would like to see addressed. I don't know that I'm saying we need to do it with this budget here, but I would certainly entertain the idea of looking into where we would find money to add a person or two, or what is it going to take?
There are two position-related items in the 15-16 draft budget that is going to assist code in providing more resources. First of all, the proposed addition of a city attorney investigator will provide a staff member who is working solely on the municipal code prosecution side of it, and that's a lot of stuff that code enforcement has been assisting with, so that should free up some existing staff. Okay. In addition, we are asking for funds for a part-time temporary parking enforcement officer, which will then free up one of our code officers who spends full-time dealing with parking enforcement to look at proactive parking enforcement in areas where we have consistent problems, but also to work on other code cases. When we're fully staffed, we have been able to take on a saturation type program where all the code officers go out over a week and hit an entire commercial area that may have had problems over time. The challenge is you have some people who comply immediately, some people who will wait the entire amount of time that they're given, and some who just, it takes a lot of time. So it's a very subjective process. With a full staff and these additional resources we're asking for in 15-16, I think you'll be able to see a lot of headway. We also have a code enforcement manager who's making it a directive of the division to be proactive, and we're not just taking every case that comes in, but when they're out on a case, looking around and seeing what's going on, and if there are major issues that need to be addressed, addressing them and not just waiting for a call.
Good. I might add that you had mentioned a couple businesses. I won't mention them by name in the meeting, but when the code officer did go out, they did the whole center. It's just that the one business hasn't complied yet.
Right. We have 3 that complied in that specific.
He's going to use the gas and time to get out there. You might as well just knock them all down at once.
They do, but they're given, for example, everyone got a 2-week notice, and some are going to take the whole 2 weeks. And then if they don't, we deal with it otherwise, while some businesses take care of it right away and then wonder how come their neighbor hasn't done something. So we're looking into it, but they did do the entire center.
Thank you.
Councilmember Campbell.
Assistant City Manager actually answered and touched on the points that I was going to ask, but I feel that we're kind of getting off topic maybe from the budget from a discussion standpoint as well. That's all.
Okay, so I hit Val Brown. We have one more speaker.
I will be very brief. I just want to say that thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I support anything that we can do for code. Clip made a really good point. If we're going to start enacting new standards to support the quality of life in our community, we're definitely going to need enforcement. So I commend all of the things you have done and encourage that we continue to make that a priority. It's one of the council goals to clean up blight, and I think it's a very effective way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Council, what is your pleasure here? I think is this a receive and file thing?
This is a receive and file, and we're just looking for any direction if there were any changes you wanted going forward. Otherwise, we'll bring back a final budget for your adoption in June.
Okay, so there's no other comments on that. We'll go on to our next item. Is that okay, everybody? Okay, then with that, we'll go on to item D3. Which is our Central Vista Business Improvement District, CV bid update. Economic Development Director Kevin Ham and Management Analyst Rachel Bell will present the report.
Good evening again, Mayor and members of the Council. Kevin Ham, Director of Economic Development, and with me is Rachel Beld, Management Analyst. Before you today is an item that allows the Vista Village Business Association to give you an update on where they are with regard to their progress with the CVBID agreement between the city. And today we have Cliff Kaiser, who is the president of the organization, giving a presentation. Mr. Kaiser?
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Mayor and Council. This is our third quarter report for the Vista Village Business Association and administration of the CVBID funds. Our fiscal year is the same as the city's. We're in our fourth quarter now and halfway through that. This is talking to the period of January through March. Some of the accomplishments we did in the first quarter was a health and safety day in the Kokorian complex, now the Sinopolis complex, DDR area. We brought in health and safety related vendors, invited people from the community to come down and enjoy the time down there. We had Dr. Bronner's Trash Patrol, Zero Waste, and others. It was a good event. And a minimal investment on our part in the sense that we didn't take a lot of funds to make it. We got a sponsor for the event, and it came off very well executed by the merchants, mainly the merchants in that area of the community. St. Patrick's Day Parade and Festival, I've seen many of you there, I think all of you there. That was very well received as well. It was our fourth annual one for downtown Vista, the North County St. Patrick's Day Parade, and from what I can tell and the feedback that we received, it was the best one so far, and we hope to build on that in the years ahead. One of our objectives has been to increase our outreach to the community, to get more people into the downtown. One of those avenues has been social media. Our new executive director, Jonathan Coino, has increased our Facebook likes from 500 to 1,100, which is pretty substantial, more than double in a short period of time, and we continue to explore avenues there, again, to get the word out inexpensively about Vista's the place, downtown Vista's the place to be. Promotions, some other promotions that we've done in the downtown that first quarter, or that are coming up, I should say, is the Taste of Vista in June. That was very successful last year, and we're hoping to repeat that and do it even better. Get 900, 1,000 people downtown, and 15 to 20 of Vista's finest restaurants serving samples of their food. The annual Rod Run coming up August 2nd. It's very well along in its planning stages. Looking forward to that event, and then we're already planning the next year's St. Patrick's Day Festival, and we'll have a couple other events in the fall that are still being discussed. We support events that are run by other organizations that are not hosted by the VVBA, and a couple of those coming up include the Strawberry Festival on Memorial Day weekend, May 24th, and the Barbecue Festival in July. Economic restructuring is one of the four-point approaches of the National Historic Main Street approach. Lev Gershman is new to our board. He has purchased a couple of properties, and his team in the downtown Vista. Very energetic gentleman, and he's going to lead up this committee. We're very excited to have him on board. Recruiting new businesses, reaching out to revitalize some of those properties that are downtown, including the building that VVBA just recently moved out of on Broadway. Including in his role will be to reach out to those communities further down on Santa Fe and elsewhere to make sure that we're communicating to them where we're going, what they think downtown Vista needs, and so we can incorporate that into our plan. Our design committee is our most active committee, successful committee here in the last year or two. We submitted a grant to the San Diego County under their neighborhood reinvestment program, and we're recently notified that we have been awarded that grant for $20,000, so we're very excited about that. That'll go into a flag program in downtown, maybe some murals, maybe some Wi-Fi. We're going to get down to the details of what our proposal was over the next month or two to spend that money. Facade improvement continues. We have Village Cafe that has submitted an application that we're working on, and those continue year after year to have little facade improvements here and there. Also, or coming up in the next fiscal year in September is the Alley Art Festival. But part of that last year, and we hope to conclude this year, would be another mural or another sort of art fixture in the downtown area as a result of that effort. Our organization committee is reaching out. Our staff has been educated, went to the National or the California Main Street Alliance Conference in Livermore this year, constantly in contact with the other Main Street program directors to learn from each other and seeing how they do things, talking with the new businesses that are coming in, including Belgian Beaver, of course, and the Flying Pig, and again, trying to continue that momentum that you guys have started and VVBA has helped and others to continue going onward. So in a nutshell, that's where we've been and a little bit of where we're going. We do have a board planning retreat next Monday, so we're going to plan the next fiscal year starting July 1st, put our budget together, put together our work plan, and present that to the city for approval for the year ahead. And I'm open to your questions.
Councilmember Rigby.
Thank you. Actually, I do have a question for you, Mr. Kaiser. I was looking at the spreadsheet that you did for us that was in our packet, and I had a question. It talked about the St. Patrick's Day event going alcohol-free, and so you're eliminating the beer gardens, I guess. Are you still going to be doing anything in concert with any of the breweries or the pub specifically? I see Jonathan shaking his head yes.
Jonathan, you're welcome to join me here. But what we've had discussed in general for events in the downtown is, from the VVA perspective, is shying away from separate beer garden. We're not totally convinced that that's the right way to go, but we have plenty of alcohol establishments in downtown, and that's one of our jobs, is to bring downtown to make the merchants more successful and have more revenue.
It makes sense to me. I was just wondering if you were working in concert with them, because someone had asked me that.
Well, we did work in the St. Patrick's Day Parade. We did work specifically with the Vista Village Pub. They were one of the sponsors for the event. They host the morning VIP breakfast, and they had the stage right in front of them. So there was a coordinated effort in this particular case.
And the one other thing about the alcohol venues, we do have the one event, which is the Taste of Vista. So we bring all the local breweries down for the Taste of Vista and put them in. So we are still working with them. And so far we have 7 of the local breweries that will be in the Taste of Vista. So,
Okay.
you know.
And then just another question. Are these events smoke-free? Like these street fairs and the St. Patrick's Day Festival and the Taste of Vista, do you allow smoking in those events?
We don't
Just
have
asking.
any restrictions or haven't even discussed the issue of smoking.
Just a question. Thank you. Oh, the other question I had for you was, on the Rod Run, you said in your spreadsheet that you increased, I think the 2014 was up to 250 cars. What had it been prior to that? Just curious.
It's been off and on. I mean, an average 200, 250 cars. At one time, we had pretty close to 300. This year, we got a great start on it, and the team that's working out there have been posting flyers. I mean, literally thousands of flyers, and, you know, we're hoping to get 300 plus cars this year.
Okay.
And last year's was an increase, but we also had threats of rain that day, and so many of the cars that we had hoped to get day of didn't show up because of that.
I remember. Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Seeing none, is this let me see what this is. This is a receive and file also. So with that, we will move on to our last discussion item, D4, which is the proposed downtown Ashcan project. Assistant City Manager Ali Zimmerman will present the report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item was requested by Councilwoman Rigby at the last council meeting, I believe. I haven't prepared a formal report. I'm going to turn it over to Councilwoman Rigby to present her proposal.
Thank you. And I also have support back here, Natalie, with the I Love a Clean San Diego organization is going to help out and answer some questions. But just to get us started off, I had been approached last year by a couple of people and a couple of businesses in the downtown area with regard to cigarette butt litter. And is that okay if she has a seat? Did you have a question? I'm getting seeing looks.
Why is she sitting down?
Well, because she is going to be answering some of the questions for us.
Over here?
Over here, yeah, that's fine. And then she also brought us one of the ash cans for us. So I had been approached by a couple of people and a couple of businesses, constituents and businesses, about the cigarette butt problem downtown and the amount of time and energy that they spend with their employees cleaning it up. And then not long after I had been having one of these conversations, I actually was contacted by somebody with the Surfrider Foundation who talked about this ash can project that they have throughout the county. They've done these ash cans, installed them in Oceanside and some other areas that Natalie might be able to discuss. And I actually thought it was a really good idea if we needed it. And I hadn't been convinced at the time that we needed to put ash cans in, about how much litter there was, until we did a walkthrough, and several of us did this walkthrough throughout the downtown area. Natalie was with us, a representative from the VVBA was with us, and a couple of other people walked the route with us. And we identified some areas where there really was a high level of cigarette butt litter on the sidewalks, in the bushes, and in the gutters. And first of all, it's unhealthy, it's litter, it's unsightly, but especially going into the gutters and into the storm drains, those toxics, the wastes, they get into the water, and then through the storm drain, they're ushered out into the Pacific Ocean, which is a hazard to marine life and the beaches, etc. And I think we should all want to be good stewards of our environment and our community, and I know I do. So when I was presented with this idea, I thought it was a good idea, that it would help us eliminate the litter in our city and also eliminate the threat to the environment with that litter. And this is a project that has been funded through grants that the VVBA stepped up and applied for the grants, and I Love a Clean San Diego, Surfrider Foundation, and Keep America Beautiful, if I'm not mistaken, also came up with grant money through different sources. So the City of Vista is not being asked to put up any funds to this project. The request here is because some of these will be put on, or I guess all of these will be put on the light posts throughout the downtown area, and we need to have City Council approval to affix anything to the light posts. So I think that's where we're at. But I wanted to just invite Natalie to give a brief description of this, and then Jonathan can talk about it if he wants to, because we do have the people who are going to be taking care of and monitoring it. This isn't anything we're asking anything from the city or city staff to take care of. So if you want to go ahead and take
she's our
it
public
from there.
speaker. We have 3 public speakers.
Okay. Well, can Natalie be first?
Yes, she is.
Okay.
I'll call. Natalie, you're first.
Okay, thank you. My name is Natalie Roberts, and I'm with a nonprofit organization called I Love a Clean San Diego. We've been around since the 1950s and serve all of San Diego County. We began doing a lot of cleanups and more reactive programs to combat litter, and this new program, which has been around for about 5 to 10 years now, combats litter from more of a preventative approach. So through our cleanups, we engage about 30,000 volunteers each year who do cleanups all throughout the entire region. That's inland areas like Vista as well. And a lot of these volunteers track what trash they're picking up. So they tally as they go what they're finding, so we get a better idea of litter and what it looks like in different communities. Cigarette butt litter is the #1 item picked up in San Diego County as well as across the world. It accounts for about 55% of what we find at our cleanups, both at beaches as well as downtown areas, parks, business districts, all throughout the whole county. So we started this program and have partnered with various different city agencies, state agencies, as well as local businesses, town councils, business improvement districts, Main Street organizations, and have partnered and put these programs in place in neighborhoods like La Jolla, Point Loma, La Mesa, North Park, Oceanside, Barrio Logan, and at a few different office areas in the Miramar and Claremont neighborhoods. The program, to really assess our success, we track how many cigarette butts we find. Like Councilmember Rigby mentioned, we did a walkthrough where we count the number of cigarette butts that are in a certain area. This program really targets downtown, mixed-use type of areas where there's a lot of pedestrian-heavy traffic, particularly places with retail, bars, restaurants, where a lot of people are walking through the whole area to go and visit all the different areas there. And then when we install the ash cans, we go back like about 3 months afterwards to reassess how many cigarette butts are littered on the ground. The county-wide program, with about 230 plus ash cans installed, has an average of 55 to 60% decrease in cigarette butt litter from that first assessment to the second one. And really the key issue is that we want to make sure that people understand, smokers, that cigarette butts do count as litter. It's a big habit that they have to break. It's very easy to stamp it out with your foot and then discard it. So we're really trying to change that attitude. We also do various program outreach to get people, like we'll be at the Strawberry Festival with pocket ashtrays to hand out to people, just so they know if they're not near an ash can that they should be properly disposing of their cigarette butts. And with this program, we're proposing 20 ash cans be installed in the downtown Vista Village area, and that creates just a very like mentality. When you see those scattered throughout within eyesight, people will realize that there's a way for them to properly dispose of their cigarette butt and be responsible with their waste. So I can be available for any questions if anyone has any.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker is Erica Leary.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. My name is Erica Leary. I'm the Program Manager for the North Coastal Prevention Coalition, which is fiscally managed by the Vista Community Clinic. I've been working there for, nearly 20 years now. The mission of the North Coastal Prevention Coalition is to reduce the harm of alcohol, tobacco, marijuana, and other drugs in the cities of Carlsbad, Oceanside, and Vista through community action, education, support, and collaboration. And we really appreciate a lot of the action that Vista's taken to reduce the harms of tobacco, including making your park smoke-free, making your civic center smoke-free, and imposing a tobacco retail license ordinance, which dramatically reduces tobacco sales to minors. And I have to admit, I'm not an expert in the topic of tobacco litter or trash receptacles. I'm not here opposing or supporting in either way. Just a few things to consider. In a quick Google search that I did this afternoon, I did come across a study that found that tobacco cigarette butt receptacles are more effective where there are smoke-free policies. So there was a study done at California community colleges comparing those without a smoke-free policy at all, those with designated smoking areas, and those that were completely smoke-free. And installing the cigarette receptacles, the tobacco litter was reduced most where there was a smoke-free policy. So I think they can work hand in hand, which is another thing to consider, and maybe making the downtown events smoke-free. I doubt that you're ready to make city streets smoke-free. Other cities have done that policy, including, I believe, the city of either Solana Beach or Del Mar and the city of Calabasas. Another thing to consider is perhaps resources to the 1-800-NO-BUTTS cessation helpline. That could be a trigger for smokers to know that there's ways to quit smoking, which of course will further help reduce the harms of tobacco use. And just to consider the location, that it doesn't create designated smoking areas based on where they're placed, and doesn't create areas where people walk by or that would, expose more people to secondhand smoke depending on where the receptacles are. So that's all I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cliff Kaiser.
The VBA is very much in support of this.
That's it? Okay. Councilmember Rigby?
I just wanted to address one of the concerns that Ms. Leary brought up about we don't want to identify smoking areas. We don't want to create a place for people to stop and start smoking or people to huddle and smoke. And one of the ways these are going to be scattered throughout the downtown area. As was mentioned, the downtown area is a place of, it's busy and people are walking and traversing. And we want to let them know that you need to put your butts out wherever you are in the downtown area, not throw them in the street. So I think that this will help people to realize to dispose of them properly, not to just stand there and congregate around them. And so that's, I just wanted to talk about that. And then also, again, it's, you know, I think it addresses part of our general plan's healthy element in that we are getting this out of the street, off the sidewalks, out of the bushes, and out of the ground or the water. So I would like to move that we approve this and allow the installation at no cost to the city to be installed at the locations that have been identified.
Councilor Campbell.
So I have some mixed feelings about this. I'm not sure where the rest of the council wants to go, but I have a few points that I think are important. One is, before the council approves it, I'd like to see where they're proposed to be placed. First off, an actual location map. The last thing I want to see is one of these stuck right out in front of Mother Earth, where there's already 20 people on a Friday night that congregate and throw all their cigarette butts on the ground, which makes it impossible to walk through there without going through a cloud of secondhand smoke. Secondly, I'm concerned about who's going to empty these out. The last thing we want are cigarette butts stuck in a closed container sitting there for weeks on end without it being properly disposed of. Now, I know you've mentioned that the business owners have agreed to do this. My concern is, what's the enforcement mechanism from a city perspective?
Councilwoman Rigby and her team, I Love a Clean San Diego, the Vista Village Business Association, have discussed is there are some businesses that would be willing to take care of an ash can in front of or near their business, and there would be some type of maintenance agreement that they would sign, and obviously if it's not being taken care of, we'd have to address it. And I believe the VVBA has agreed to take on any others that are in the community. Ms. Roberts can speak to about how long she had given us some information about how long it would take to fill one of them up. It doesn't require a daily or weekly clean out, but that would be the VVBA's participation, if I recall.
That's correct. And if I'm not mistaken, it's about monthly that they need to be emptied. And we have commitments from the business owners to take ownership of the ones near them. And then the VVBA, the executive director, Mr. Coino, has said that the VVBA would also take the lead on ensuring that.
Okay. The other point I'd like to say right quick is, if these are installed and there's still people that are throwing their cigarette butts on the ground, it is litter. And I'd like to ask that we enforce the laws that are already on the books, that if the sheriff's department catches somebody throwing that on the ground, that they're issued a citation for litter.
I would just say I think the sheriffs have better things to do than follow somebody around throwing a cigarette butt on the ground.
Well, I wasn't saying that we station surveillance down there, but if they notice somebody doing that, which I've noticed and observed personally many times, you know, it is...
Well, as long as I have the microphone, I'll tell you, I wouldn't support these. I think they're ugly, first, and second, I wouldn't want to see 20 of those things in our downtown. I just can't. Those are very ugly. They would look like people were sticking like garage sale things down in the street or something. So I'm not going to support. I think business owners can put. I've seen little ash things that business owners have out in front. I think Hennessy's have them. They can put their butts in out there already, and the business owner can take care of it. So that's anyway. I just jumped kind of in there. Okay, Deputy Mayor Aguilera, sorry.
Took all my comments. Yeah, we probably could have got a better picture than this one. My concern is the number, 20 ash cans. That's a lot, and it just looks like we're encouraging smoking. in our downtown. And I am certainly for people's freedoms to ruin their health if that's what they want to do, but I'm not here to encourage people to smoke either. So that's one of my concerns, is the number. And part of that is not just the encouragement, but part of that is, as Councilman Campbell mentioned, there's certain parts of our city where we don't even allow smoking. I believe it's 25 feet with establishments that are serving alcohol and food for sure.
Correct. You can't stop. I believe, for example, you could be walking, but you can't stop and loiter anywhere in front of any open doorway.
But I think these things might encourage people to loiter and smoke wherever they find them, and if we have one in front of, let's pick a business, El Ranchero, I'm sure I've heard people complain about, the smoke there. Sometimes it kind of comes in from next door, or maybe people walking by or what have you. So I guess we're giving direction to staff. I'm not saying I'm completely against these things. I think we need to modify. I'd like to see where they want to where they propose to put them. I'd like to see the number probably go down, because I can't imagine that we have 20 areas where we would want people smoking, or even allow smoking in those areas.
For the record, we just put up the proposed mock-up of what the Vista one would look like. So it's not a picture, obviously, but I Love a Clean San Diego was able to show how the logos would be reflected on the ones that would be potentially in Vista.
Councilwoman Rigby, I'm sorry if I missed it, do you have a listing of the locations that?
Where is that? Is that in our report?
If you could turn on your microphone.
We do have a site map, and I'm sorry, I thought it would be in the staff report, but it's not. We have identified 20 locations, and I know Councilman Franklin had put your speaker on, but do you mind if I field some questions? And I can appreciate not wanting to encourage smoking on anybody and in anywhere, but to think that it's not happening is naive, because after doing the walkthrough, only 2 days after city staff had already gone out and done street sweeping, there were areas in this 20 location list that had nearly 100 cigarette butts in that area. So the smoking is happening, and we really want to address the litter and the unhealthy, unsanitary condition of the cigarette butts in the street, is what my goal is.
Well, I never said it was not happening.
Okay, so it's not. We didn't pick these locations just out of a hat. We actually visited, and some locations that we thought, oh, that's never going to be needed. Oh my goodness, there were 77 cigarette butts right there, and other locations that I thought for sure we would need them, they really didn't need it. So this was a visit, but it was going down Main Street. We went down Main Street all the way from the Village Cafe to the Lamppost Pizza, all the way down there, and interviewed that. We walked Citrus, Broadway, and a little bit down Santa Fe toward Pepper Tree and Danny's Donuts, and identified areas. So I have this list here of the 20 locations. I can pass it down the way. So, and just to reiterate, it's to clean up the litter from the street, and how we address with further education and public awareness about don't smoke. That's a different issue, I think. But then the design of the sticker, I think of, because this is the ash can in its, before it has a sticker applied to it, it's just a simple gray ash can. And the sticker was designed so that people knew what it was for, to put, let them see it, to know that this is where you put your cigarette butts.
Yeah, I mean, is that the size of it also?
Yes, that's an actual can.
Where?
Right here.
The corner of the desk there.
So I'm thinking that if the bright yellow is offensive and too eye-popping for people, is it possible we could revisit what the label looks like? Is that, if that's a concern for the visual aesthetics of it?
I just don't like all the writing on it and stuff. It just looks like somebody put a garage sale sign on there. I mean, I just don't think it would add something to the streets. I don't think it would, I think it would make our streets look junky.
So I'm asking
I don't think a new
Natalie
sticker
if,
was going to change that.
I'm sorry? Do you want to talk
Yeah, I
about that?
can answer that question. We also discussed customizing the color of the ash can so it wouldn't be this kind of stainless steel gray. It can be customized to match the color of the light posts to really make sure it looks correct with the cityscape. And again, the idea is we don't want it to match too much into the cityscape so that people notice them and that they use them, and that that's eye-catching for them to realize the message that we're trying to deliver. So that's the thought behind it.
So we have a little bit of wiggle room on the aesthetics of it. And then on the list also, in revisiting the list and with meeting with the executive director of the VVBA again and with the assistant city manager, we probably thinking a couple of those locations we might tweak. Excuse me. And then the VVBA did request 2 other locations, or for us to consider 2 other locations, which would replace the ones that we might remove, so the number wouldn't go up at all.
So Councilmember Franklin, maybe, the next speaker.
Would these cans become the property of the city after they're installed? Who would own them after they're installed?
I don't know if that has been clarified.
Do you know the answer to that question? Are these being,
Basically, we've received grant funding to purchase the ash cans, and then we do often, with our past programs, give them directly to the partnering agencies. So whether that be the VVBA or the City of Vista, that's something we can definitely adapt to what is preferable. And then also, we just want to make sure it's known that this is adjustable. These aren't going to be grafted to the pole. They're going to be strapped on with just like a piece of metal banding. So they can be relocated, they can be reduced. It's sort of a pilot with each different program we do, where we can reassess after a year whether they should be moved, whether some of them aren't needed, but some of them may be needed elsewhere. So it is adaptable as time goes on.
Typically, we have a license agreement with the organization that is furnishing them, and we would give them the opportunity to remove them from the right-of-way if the program was discontinued, and if they didn't do it within a certain time frame, then the city would, take them and remove them.
I just wanted to know if we had the desire to amend the program later, if we could remove them with our staff. A couple of more things. Will the city retain final discretion over all placements?
Well, I think, Councilwoman Rigby is presenting the item here tonight as a discussion to see if the council's supportive. And I think based on the discussion that's already occurred, if you get to the point and you are supportive, maybe it means that we refine the limits, the locations, the rules, procedures, you name it, and come back to you at the next council meeting so that everybody's on board with it. But I think tonight, really, she's looking for direction from the council if you're supportive.
Okay. So I'm supportive of the ash cans. I think it's great to encourage people to put litter in an acceptable receptacle, and I think the goal is very admirable, and so I support the goal. Particularly when the cans are painted the color of the lampposts so that they blend. But here's where, unfortunately, I come on the other side of this, which is I do not feel that the bright sign... I have not noticed, and I'm frequent downtown, I have not noticed myself the cigarette problem, and that may just simply because I wasn't looking down or I wasn't looking for it. And so I am concerned about replacing a problem I didn't notice with pictures of cigarette butts and the word butts 20 places all over. I really do not like the signage. I find it to be visual blight. And I have some other concerns about essentially allowing advertising on our city property, be it commercial or otherwise. Some of it I don't have a problem with, and some I do. And so if we eventually move forward with this, it would be my strong preference to have some signage on them that would be minimal. In fact, what I would really like to see is some kind of an etching on the can that says, you know, cigarette butt receptacle or something. It's an interesting device, and I promise you that is the kind of thing, if I saw it affixed to a light post, I would wonder what it was. And I would walk up to it as a non-smoker, and I would read, and I would go, oh, that's for your cigarette. Well, that's clever. You know, I think, and if I was a smoker and I cared enough to be a good citizen, I think I could figure out what that was without a giant flashing neon sign. And so I actually really believe people would utilize them without all the advertising. And because I'm not happy with the label, I'd like to see us do something better there and say if we're going to do this, can we really pay close attention to the visual aspect of it? That'd be my concern. But I'm supportive of the cans themselves in a general sense. I think it's, you know, we can get people to take litter off the street. That's a good thing.
Councilmember Campbell.
Just quick wrap up for my point. This list, there's way too many in my mind in the DDR, what used to be the Krikorian Center, Sinopolis Center. For 10 of them to be down there, in my mind, is very excessive. Not to mention some of these locations are right next to each other, Chipotle and Panda. The last thing we want to do, I think, as a city is encourage people to congregate around a cigarette butt receptacle and smoke next to our eating establishments. Okay. One of the things I would say is if we're going to put them anywhere is put them farther out in some of the parking lots where that would maybe encourage people to go away from these locations to go smoke. If we're going to do that at all, you know, what gets to me is the city of Oceanside just last week took a measure with one of their areas. They were having significant trouble with cigarette butt litter, and they had tried putting cigarette butt receptacles down there, and their police department actually came to the city and said, we need to make a change in our code because we're having trouble with transients and vagrants that are congregating in that area. Smoking is one of the commonalities that those individuals that are having problems with were sharing. And the city council came back, and instead of saying, well, let's fix the litter problem, they went and prohibited smoking in their amphitheater in downtown Pierre area, because that gives them that tool to address the problem they were having. I think it's interesting in a way we're kind of going in an opposite direction a little bit, which is putting a Band-Aid on the problem, not really going after the root problem, which is people are committing a crime by throwing it on the sidewalk. And one of the areas that I think that's interesting now, that to me is a problem because we're trying to promote our downtown, we're trying to make it more family friendly, and we're wanting people to come from Carlsbad and Oceanside here. You know, you go walk by Mother Earth, they're supposed to be 25 feet, which puts them on the edge of the sidewalk or over, and they're using the bench that's there, they're standing 10 feet from the door, they're propping up against the wall next to the entrance, and it creates a very negative image. And I'm not sure putting a cigarette receptacle out front of Mother Earth is going to help. It's probably going to worsen that. So I wouldn't be supportive of hardly any of these locations that are on here. We'd really need to address that. And from a visual perspective, this is probably the graphic that works most effectively. I'm sure your organization has worked on that in terms of identifying this receptacle for people to use, because I got to tell you, I've seen people where those other receptacles, I believe the ones you're talking about, they stand on the ground and you have to kind of drop it in. I've seen them stand 2 feet away from it and they just throw it on the ground. Most of the people that are throwing it on the ground now are not going to walk 25 feet or 40 feet to put it in a device. It does help, but I'm not in favor of putting 20 bright yellow stickers that says butts in here throughout our downtown area that we're trying to improve not only visually, but from a health standpoint as well.
You know where you need them is on the freeway exit ramp where the people stop and dump their ashtrays out. I've cleaned those up before when we did that, but yeah. Councilmember Rigby.
So thank you for that. And actually, Oceanside does have a lot of these very receptacles, and they've done a lot of improvement for what their concern was with that in those areas. But if I were to refine my motion and say that, we would allow them to be installed, the city staff would work with us and the VVBA on refining the locations and perhaps redesigning the sticker, because we do want people to know what they are. But I agree, we don't want it to be, really that out there that it's blinking at you. But would that, could I get a second on that we allow them with the refinement of the locations and redesign of the sticker, working with staff and the VVBA?
My other concern is who people say they're going to empty these, but and they might empty them a few times, but on the long term, are people really going to empty those things?
Well, in other areas, the answer to that is yes. The people who take ownership
How
of
long
them
have they
do
been there?
that. And then, some of the areas that they've been, I don't know, how long have these cans been out in the communities already? 2009. And I know that certain areas of San Diego City have had this program since 2009, and they keep expanding the program. But also, we had talked about it's something that is revisited after 3 months to see what the waste is versus what we find on the ground. And if we find that the areas are not working, that nobody's using them, or there are too many, I mean, this is very pliable. I mean, it's not permanent. We're not doing it in granite. So I'm just asking for consideration with some of the flexibilities of doing the program and keeping it provisional. If it doesn't work, we can always take them down. Okay?
I'm not convinced, sorry.
Well, I thank you for coming out and for doing this and for working with us for over a year on this. And Jonathan, you too. And staff, thank you.
With that, okay, I guess we're down to public comments. Let's see, where are we? No, we're not. No, there's no oral communications. I don't have any speakers left, so I don't have that. So I think we're down to public comments. So I'll start with remarks. I want to start with remarks, he said. So any remarks from our council members? I'll start with John Aguilera. No. It says reports from members of the governing bodies or outside committee meetings. They can't combine that with their remarks? Patrick's getting technical, yes. Okay, so John, do you have any reports from members of governing bodies?
I do not.
Outside committee meetings?
No.
Councilmember Campbell?
I do, very briefly. I'm not sure that we're going to be having a council meeting prior to June, so I did want to report that I'll be attending on behalf of the Regional Solid Waste Association the Waste Expo convention the first week of June, and we'll come back and report to the city on that, some of the new regulatory and recycling requirements that we're going to have going forward in the future. I'd also like to request, we kind of got into this as a little bit off topic from the budget, but the code enforcement side for the city, and I talked with the city manager and city attorney briefly about this before, but I'd like to put it on as a discussion item moving forward. The fees and assessments we do on repeat violators of our municipal code in the city, I believe it was Encinitas just made an adjustment to that. I'd like to put that on as a discussion item to see what our options are for our sort of habitual violators that don't comply.
Okay.
So if that can come back in June. And that's all.
Councilmember. Oh, yeah. I saw shaking heads. So, yeah, yes. Yeah, I'm happy to do it. John's head was shaking. Okay. Councilmember Franklin, any reports? Okay. Councilmember Rigby?
The league meeting was canceled this week, so we won't be meeting again until June. And I did have an Encina meeting today, but that'll be something coming before us at a future date.
Okay. And let's see, so then we have to go to any reports or comments. Deputy Mayor. Everybody's shaking.
Yes,
Councilmember Rigby?
actually, I do. At a previous meeting, I had requested to bring back the red light cameras, and it was my mistake not remembering the City Council Policy 200-4, that in an item that comes before a City Council, not on the agenda, can be placed there for 2 members, doesn't apply to revisiting an item. So I do need a consensus of 3 council members to bring back the red light camera for discussion, because it had been on the agenda previously. So I'm looking for consensus to bring back the red light camera discussion for a future agenda item.
Anybody?
Anybody? Okay, a third?
Yep. I think they're working in Vista, so I wouldn't bring it back.
Well, I'm very sad that we don't even get the opportunity to have that discussion, which brings me to my second remark, which is City Council Policy 200-4. I would like to have this brought back for further discussion. Do we need 3 for that one as well? Yes. Anybody?
I would agree to put that back on.
Okay, so we have a consensus to revisit this one. Thank you.
Did you want to ask something before we move on? Okay, then in that case, I have to do my mayor's comments, and Patrick, our city manager, has some. So I have 4 things. The Rock and Brews Festival is this Saturday, May 16th at 4 p.m. at the Moonlight Amphitheater. Tickets are on sale at vistatixonline.com. And on May 19th, the Senior Center's Culture Caravan is offering a San Diego Padres Petco Park tour and a trip to Seaport Village for all ages. And you can call 760-643-2828. It's 643-2828 for more information. On May 22nd, the public is invited to the Moonlight Amphitheater for a free screening of Big Fish in advance of the musical version, which will play at the Moonlight in September. The gates are open at 7, and the movie begins at 8. And the last thing is, in addition to those activities, we have a lot going on in the final days of May. We have the Wave Water Park opens Memorial Weekend on Saturday, May 23rd. And on Saturday, the Strawberry Festival takes place. Or on Sunday, rather, the Strawberry Festival takes place. So you can drop by the city booth to learn more about what's going on in Vista at the Strawberry Festival. We'll have a booth there. So with that, I'll pass it to our city manager, Patrick Johnson.
In addition to what you just mentioned on Memorial Day, which is on May 25th at 10 a.m., we will have the Memorial Day ceremony here at the Civic Center parking lot. This will be put on by the VFW and the American Legion. And then following that at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the Rotary Club will be unveiling or dedicating the Rotary Wall, which is off of Vista Village adjacent to the Vista Magnet Middle School. So we have an event at 10 o'clock and an event at 2 o'clock. And as Councilmember Campbell mentioned, it's very likely that the meeting on May 26th will be canceled. And so our next meeting will likely be on June 9th, unless something comes up that's of an emergency nature. And last thing is, over the past few weeks, there's been a lot of discussion on water usage and issues going on, not only just in the city, the county, and the state. And so I wanted to let everybody know that Vista Irrigation District is our water purveyor. They're in charge of the water and the enforcement of that. And they will be holding meetings tomorrow morning as well as May 27th to finalize their plan of going forward and how they're going to go with the mandated water reductions, which I believe are 24% for the city of Vista. And so they're going to hold those meetings. So if the public's interested, they'll be doing that on the 13th and the 27th. And then they're also going to come as a presentation item on June 9th to the City Council, the VID will, and present what their plan of action is so that the city is aware.
What time's the meeting tomorrow?
I'm not sure. I believe it's in the morning. I believe it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock. look it up on the website.
I also heard on the news that they're sending teams out in our cities up here to check and see people who are not abiding by the water, that wasting water. So everybody, thank you. Well,
To reclaim my time to make a comment, I would like to seek support to offer a new resolution for the purpose of providing formal direction to staff regarding red light cameras. I am not interested in reconsidering a past item. I would like to offer a resolution for providing of guidance and council's intent to staff. Would there be any member that would join with me in that? And does our city attorney see any issue with that? We have the right to amend any code, ordinance, resolution with a prospective action that is not a reconsideration of a past action. A pure reconsideration of a past action, you can't bind the hands of a future council in that way.
I think the question is,
you can't
the
say
action was to approve a contract with a vendor which is currently in process. Are you suggesting revisiting the action of approving the contract and terminating it? It's not clear to me what you're proposing.
No, I am suggesting that a new resolution, I would like to offer a new resolution which would provide guidance that would be different from past council's guidance. We have the right to amend any code, ordinance, resolution on a prospective basis. We are not bound by the actions of previous councils. So this is not a reconsideration of a past item. This is a new resolution to provide guidance in a prospective manner.
It's a question of the interpretation of the policy. I would, as with all parliamentary issues, putting it on the agenda, the chair would make the ruling on whether or not it complies with the policy. And if there's disagreement, then the council can either accept or overrule the chair.
Well, I don't think it's, I would plead my case to the chair then and say that I don't think, a pure reconsideration is a reconsideration. But in a repeal, an amendment, a change to an existing ordinance or policy is something that we have every right to do. And we voted on this by a vote of 3. We voted that we would have the right to offer new items, and new items include changes to existing policy.
Point of order.
I mean, that is very, very clear. I'll cease it.
I'd like to ask the city attorney if we're getting into the realm of having a discussion on how to discuss putting an item back on the agenda. I think we just agreed to place that policy back on the agenda at a future meeting for discussion at that time, because I would reference the point that was made when the current council policy was recently adopted. This discussion came up for the potential of exactly this scenario, and the current policy was approved in form.
And the council has already agreed to bring back the policy at the next meeting. So perhaps that will clarify how the council wants to treat this. But it's up to the council how they put items on its agenda.
I'm confused. Was Councilwoman Rigby told that the action the council took at the last meeting invalidated because it did not comply? Or does that action stand? The action to place the item on the agenda, does it stand or does it not stand?
It does not stand.
I mentioned to her that it didn't appear to follow policy 200-04, and that which states if a vote's been taken on an agenda item and a council member wishes to place it on a later agenda, a majority of the council must approve the request.
Well, I'd like to point out to the council that this wrong interpretation, and I think it's flatly wrong, is a complete repeal of our understanding of the change we made to the council policy. And I would suggest to any member that does not join me in that thinking that they are preparing to return to 3 members to put something on the agenda. Because everything is a revisitation of something passed by a previous council. Everything, every single thing we do here is a revisitation of something done by a previous council.
Why would we not just bring everything up every time? So can we adjourn, or do we have to solve this now?
Why not? I'd like, can you make a ruling, and then do I have the parliamentary right to appeal the ruling of the chair to a majority vote of the body?
Yes.
Okay, then let's proceed. What do we want the policy of the council to be? Is it 2 or is it 3?
Well, the policy is coming back.
It's coming back.
Which policy?
200-04.
Three of you already agreed to bring that policy back at the next meeting. So I thought at that point, this issue might be clarified.
Very well. I'll drop my inquiry then.
And I think we're adjourned.